wait, this is so weird. What's going on here? All right. Oh, hey. Okay. Hello. Welcome. Dilly, and happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you guys for spending your holiday this evening with us Melee nerds here. My name is Turn Down for Walt. I'm joined by my lovely co-host RadarSSBM, and we're the Mixup. Today we got a juicy one. It is the first of hopefully many. Who knows? This might just become an extension of the Melee Stats podcast at some point. But it is our podcast team up. We're hoping to do this with a few other folks in the future. But starting us off with this whole mashup, we are joined by the Melee Stats podcast. That is Ambisinister, Edwin Budding, and Gimme That Wheat. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing good.
I'm doing well.
Good.
Sweet. Okay, really cool. Should we start over again, or?
No, I think we're
right. We can do it a third time. Yeah.
Cool.
I just want to say dilly again.
Thank you. And I do believe that both Wheat and myself will be partaking in the festivities of, as true Irishmen. If you couldn't tell, I'm also Irish. So, but
this one's for mint.
But yeah, we have a pretty cool show scheduled up for you guys tonight. I hope you guys are excited to watch. And of course, thank you guys for tuning in, hanging out with us. Really excited to be bringing the Mixup back because it's been a while. So I mean, Radar, you and I haven't talked in like a month. So how's it going, man?
We have talked on Discord being like, yo, episode this week? Well, we got to figure some stuff out. Maybe we'll put it off a little bit. We'll reschedule, and it just keeps happening. So it's good to be back for sure. I think, long overdue, but it's great to be here.
Yeah, so we got a lot going on, and just kind of general PSA for everyone who's in chat right now. We will be looking, our last section of the evening is kind of a wrap up with Q&A, hashtag AskTheMixup. Again, eventually it will be trending, I promise you that. But as of right now, we'll kind of be pulling questions from our Discords, our Twitter, and you guys in chat. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to write them down in chat. We will take note of them, take a look at them, and let's get everybody chatting on our main topics for the evening, which will be the Smash World Tour and online rankings, which, what a better group to ask than Melee Stats.
Hell yeah.
It's almost as if we planned that specifically.
That's right.
So wait, maybe this is why you guys can do podcasts. You guys don't talk outside of the podcast?
No, we'll talk.
No, we do.
But we've been talking so much about like we got to do an episode, and then it's always like, okay, well, how are we gonna do this? Like, got to make sure it makes sense, and then it just.
I could probably scroll back in our chat and like read verbatim like every time it fell through over the past crazy. 4 weeks.
It has been not good.
I feel like I get 150 messages from these two like literally every day.
That's why we don't have podcasts as
I'm like, I don't want to do a show. I know what all of you think about these topics already. Like,
dude, I gotta talk to these guys for an hour and a half every week. Like, literally can't go a day without having 50 messages.
See, that's the secret though, is you gotta claim that you're doing it bi-weekly like we do, and then just cancel for a month straight.
Yeah, I'm just gonna offer some transparency on that. All 50 messages that we were talking about were from me.
I think like 40 of them are you.
And they have nothing to do with Melee.
10 of them are we saying no in some different flavor. So it is mostly you though.
And they don't have anything to do with Melee, or at least most of them don't.
Fair enough.
So with all that out of the way, let's get into our, intro and news, go over the stuff that kind of we need to get out of the way first. Walt, do you want to speak to the Four Loco Fight Night recap, I guess, first?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys watched it. This was probably one of the first events that I actually watched like live during the online era. Oh, what happened? Did we drop someone?
Oh no.
No. Edwin dipped.
We lost, yeah.
Oh. Well, now we're all out of order. God damn it.
Yeah, this might be.
Who am I now? Am I Edwin? Please switch me.
I don't think there's a way for me to move it in Discord. That's too bad. Anyway, we'll keep trucking along. But yeah, I mean, basically, the moral of the story was there was a lot of really cool stuff that. Oh Are you fucking kidding me? You're fucking killing me, Edwin. Come on, man.
All right,
I'm so sorry.
You're good. Yeah, I hadn't watched like an online event live in a while. I think the last one I saw was probably like a SCL or something along those lines. Really entertaining event. Great stuff put on by Four Loko. I believe it was Beast Coast that organized the entire thing. Zane, of course, showing that he's really, really excellent at the game. First place, second place, the man Stooge taking a good run. He actually, I think, 3-0'd Zane, right, in winners.
Yeah.
And then Keizu actually making quite a bit of a run as well. The one for me that really stuck out was, of course, Jmook stock is kind of like surging right now, and Mango versus Lucky, I have heard, and I actually haven't watched the set in full yet, that it was like one of the most entertaining sets in Melee in a while. So
I mean, that's always with their sets. I honestly feel like they're playing like a tournament set whenever they run into each other in bracket. I just feel like they're doing Mango things and Lucky things on the screen together until Mango wins. So I'm sure it was fun to watch.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, overall, pretty quick recap of that event. I think the S2J win over Zane is something that shouldn't be ignored. Because I think the theme, at least in my opinion, I'm curious as to what you guys think, but like a lot of or at least some of the grand finals that are coming to mind against Falcons were probably just against none, more or less. And, you know, the sets would be kind of competitive, but Zane won pretty handily most of the time. The fact that S2J, in a similar vein of playstyle to none, in my opinion, was able to 3-0 him and in winners. He wasn't able to go the distance in grands, of course, but a 3-0 is no joke.
Yeah, I mean, so S2J actually beat Zane in a set that is in the Melee Stats March Madness Best Set of All Time poll voting occurring now.
Mm-hmm.
It was at LACS 3, which is kind of the thing that made us feel like Zane could actually be beaten. I feel like in Marth sets from the beginning of netplay, I think that the only set that he lost before that was the one at SCL week 1 to Mango, and everything else he won. So he ended up getting like 4th or 5th at that event at LACS 3. I think he lost to Axe and S2J, and that was the first thing that kind of showed that he is not the infallible, like 100% will win everything god that we thought he was. But yeah, I mean, this was like a sick event because we see that people can still beat him and he can still turn on those jets. And was it a 6-0 or was it a 6-1? I swear, I actually stopped watching by the end of it.
3-1 in the reset and a 3-0 in the first set, so
Gotcha.
6-1.
Yeah, the writing was kind of on the wall after the first set, so I kind of dipped a little bit. But
yeah,
sick tournament. I love to see Keizu do well. I swear I don't know like what he's doing.
He always seems to like just get like random third place, and then you're like, who did he play? That like I have no idea how he even got there. But like everyone knows that he's really good.
Recently, I think it was at the end of 2020. He beat IBW.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Mango's Falcon.
All he has to do is not run into Ice Climbers, which is so easy now.
Well, so he played Mango's Falcon in this tournament, right? Because he 3-0'd him.
Yeah.
And then he beat Moki, close one. I'm just looking at the rest. Close 5-game set versus S2J, and then 3-0 versus or 0-3 to Zane. So I mean, yeah, those are all really good wins overall.
Well, I want to be fair to Keizu on one thing in the Mango set. I know Mango went Falcon in the second and third game, but Keizu made a huge comeback in the first game. And I know this because in the first game when I saw Mango's Falco play Keizu, I stopped watching after the first 20 seconds because Mango was destroying him, and I was like, okay, there's no point to watching the set. And then I checked Discord later, and I see that Kalamazoo is 3-0'd Mango, and I thought, what happened? How could this happen after the first 20 seconds? And I think I only want to comment on Keizu because I'm writing a little bit about it, or I'm writing a little bit about it for next week for my column, and I had written about Keizu a little earlier, like post the event. And I think that there's kind of a tendency to look at a run with an instance like Mango DQing and discount it. But if you look at Keizu's resume since like LACS 3, like the last quarter of a year, it's pretty rock solid. Like he has an IBDW win also. His records are really good against the field. I believe the like quote unquote worst loss he has is to Whiskers, which all things considered is not really like bad. Like his records are just really solid and clear, like even outside of Mango's DQ, like he is beating good people pretty solid consistently.
Yeah, I think that certainly ties into our later topic for online rankings, because like at least for me as someone who hasn't followed Keizu specifically that closely, it's like I had no idea where I would put this guy. Like he's obviously in the discussion for, you know, a top X level player, but you know, as he has been for basically every year of the rankings list, but you know, the numbers are just like a very hard sell to figure out who goes where. So I'm really interested to get to that topic later on in the night and kind of hear what you guys have to think about that. I'm assuming we'll probably run through kind of like what we project our top 10 or whatever number to be. And but yeah, I mean, Four Loco Fight Night, super cool event. The other thing that I personally wanted to give a shout out to before we move on to our main topic for the evening, or first main topic of the evening, is the Galint Gaming's second online major, which will be coming up on Friday. Actually, I think it's Friday to Sunday. Super duper cool event. They have a lot of really cool stuff planned. For the people in the chat who know who Kevin Deere is, he's been heading up a lot of the content curation. I believe you guys actually, Melee Stats, have something on the docket for that weekend as well.
Yeah, if you like us rambling on about players that you've never heard of, then we got something to show you on Friday.
Is it Friday? I thought it was Saturday. Okay.
One thought I had just while we were talking about the Four Loco event, that was the event that Mango was sick, right?
Yep. Yeah. Was it? Okay.
One of the things I'm curious about, you know, you guys being kind of the ranking people, like, how do you guys factor that kind of stuff? So say someone says like, oh, I have a terrible flu, like I'm dying here. And then they go in and they get 3-0. Do you guys go like flu asterisk on the set? Or do you just think, well, it is what it is? Like, I've been kind of curious.
I want to hear your answer on this first, because I suspect that this is something that like actually us three wouldn't have similar-ish, but not quite the same opinion on.
So like, or you said wheat. Okay, I thought you said wheat. Okay, yeah.
That's his accent coming out. Yeah, I mean, generally, like if I were to sum it up, it's basically like, who cares, right? That's the short answer. And the long answer is that we have so much data from these people where I'm able to see someone's results and say, okay, you had a bad day, right? Even if it's not being sick or anything like that, you know, one bad loss doesn't really matter too much to me. I think Ice last year, or 2019, Ice had a tournament where he lost to Kinzo, who now we know as one of Germany's best players, one of Europe's top players. But that was just like some random loss. But everything else he did was good. He was like destroying Nikki, destroying Prof, or like beat everyone in Europe except for Triff. So I personally didn't really care that much about it. If he has a long record of weird losses, then yeah, that's an issue. If it's a trend of poor performances, then that's something you have to take into account. But if someone has one-off performance, it's hard for me to really hold it against them too much. And you start to do that, and then you get those top players who start tweeting how they don't want to enter tournaments anymore because they can't lose one set. Yeah, it's something like that. Did I take everyone's points?
Yeah, Amy, you go next, because
really
that's
quick,
a good.
Because I have like a sort of a two-part thing to this. Like the one is that I think people super overblow how big of a problem a single set is. Like the only time a single set is really going to affect your ranking, I think, is usually if you beat someone way better than you. I think that, like, you know, to add to this like sick point, I think that a lot of this just depends on like what kind of things you get to hear about from the player after their sets. Because like some players will go out and be like, oh yeah, you know, like I was super sick or whatever, blah blah blah. But like a lot of the upsets that you know people fondly remember, like low key have these elements to them, and you just don't hear about them because the players don't talk about them or whatever. Like, do you guys remember when Wizrobe lost to L at the Big House that one time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, not a lot of people know about this because Wizrobe is not like a big John tweeter, but Wizrobe actually had food poisoning.
Oh my God.
He had food poisoning during the set because he ate some like tuna sandwich and he was like deathly ill, and L just destroyed him. And he like like everyone was just like, oh well, I guess Wizrobe can just lose to L. And Wizrobe got a good ranking that year, and it was fine. It was really not like a huge deal. But like there's this weird perception because sometimes players get ranked really well because of wins, that if you go to one tournament and you lose, even if it's like a really tiny tournament and like no one cares about the results of the tournament, that like, oh no, like my ranking is in jeopardy because I dropped one set, like in ladder before the bracket of the tournament or whatever. And I just think that's so weird. Like I just like there's like nothing that has ever happened that has actually made that to be the case. It's very rare for this to actually do anything at all. So, just to like Wheat's point, like who cares? Like it's really not that important because the trends will jump out when you have like a lot of sets between players of similar skill levels. So it really just doesn't matter for the most part.
The only thing I would add to that. So first off, I agree with Wheat and I agree with Ambi. I think they both state the first 2 points really well. But I do think there's a third point, at least for me. When it comes to something like DQs or if anything that could be classified as shenanigans continues to happen to a player in a trend over and over again, I'm not going to name anyone in particular, but I can definitely think of 1 or 2 examples of players of the last 2 years when viewing them, when trying to compare between players of a given tier. If there's one player that doesn't have as many sets but might DQ a lot or go secondaries at events a lot, I'm going, at least for me as a panelist or as a voter, I will likely give the edge to someone who attends a lot and who doesn't DQ as much or is willing to take a tournament seriously. So I think it's very funny that or not so much funny, but it's very bizarre to me that some players would worry about attending too much and having individual losses stand out badly. Because to me, if someone goes to majors but DQs or sandbags, to me, I wouldn't give them the edge over a similar player who may have attended more and might have more outlier sets. I don't know.
So I think
go ahead.
I think an example of this is like imagine you have Kudoran versus Face Roll, and when you had in tournament stuff or LAN tournaments, they would play all the time, and their record at the end of the year might be like 20 Face Roll to 3 Kudoran, and it's not like I'm going to be like, okay, well I guess Face Roll's in top 20 anymore. He's got 3 losses to this Mark who's outside the top 50. But it's more like, okay, small props to Kudoran. I'm able to see that if he can, even in a 20 sets, if he's able to take a few, then that is a little bit. But yeah, like when it comes to that, unless you're doing like when West Balls was like 8-8 with Nut or whatever, like 12-12 with him, whatever he was, literally lost half of his sets versus this unranked Sheik at the time. Unless it's something where you have like a huge trend, and I don't like 1-2 set losses don't really matter. And yeah, like Edwin said, someone asked me from a different region, they were wondering how to do a PR when you have players playing a secondary. And I said, if they go secondary at a tournament or 2, who cares, right? Like, it's hard to get on people's cases for wanting to enter a tournament and then, like, not being able to have fun sometimes. But if they have 60% of their data as, like, Young Link, and they're like, no, I'm a Falco man. It's like, no, you're a Young Link man. This season, like you can't go that much and then be like only count my Falco results. So until we have something like that, then I don't think we have to worry about getting really hard on like specific results.
So just a question, and I don't want to like derail the way the topics are structured, Walt. So like maybe we don't have to answer this now.
Yeah,
but
either or, it doesn't matter to me.
The first thought that I'm having is, what about when people switch controllers? So like you hear, someone making a box switch. Obviously, I'm not saying I completely agree with what you're saying. That's kind of the thing I would believe. But of course, if someone's like, oh, I'm going to try out the box in this tournament or whatever, and then they don't keep at it, well, that's also a one-off. What about this kind of like, I am relearning the game on a different thing? How do we evaluate if like a Leffen or someone kind of, Pipsqueak beat Leffen when he was playing on the box? That's an example that's relatively recent, like that kind of stuff. How do you guys look at that?
So I think it's similar if someone changes mains, right? Like the assumption is that this is a permanent change. With Leffen, it's kind of weird because he's like, oh, I'm going to use a different controller when stuff comes back. But you have all these different players who presumably are playing box now and will play box in the future. So if someone's results do get worse, yeah, we do have to kind of fault them for that. If they go to 10 tournaments a week with the box and they don't put up as good results as they do with the controller, then I'm not going to act like, to seed them like if they were playing on controller. You have H-Twa last year who had some really good Sheik results and then switched to Fox and didn't have great Fox results, but still got top 100 just because those Sheik results were so good. But in terms of like seeding or what to expect from them, the expectations are definitely lower because there's a different character. So I'd say the same thing with the box, because as far as I know, no one's just going to go box for one tournament and then go GameCube controller for the next 10.
And then I assume the reverse is true as well, where like, you beat the Leffen person or whatever, and they're doing generally worse, so the win is valued less, I would assume, right? Like if someone actually switched mains or whatever, like that would be calculated the same, or
depends.
I think a lot of this depends. Just like from my own perspective, right? Is that the important thing to note here is that netplay tournaments have like substantially lower stakes than IRL tournaments, and that different players have different speeds at which they can reach their original skill level with a new controller or like a new character, which is largely dependent on like what they're switching to, either controller or character wise. So like for me, it's sort of like you want to treat it almost like it's an entirely separate player. So like Leffen on frame 1 is like a really interesting example because like it's very clear that he's like not the same level that he is on GameCube controller, at least like at the moment. But like he was still like, a top echelon European professional player, right? Like, him like trading stats with Pipsqueak and like doing really well like against like, the whole like upper tier of active Europe right now. It's like a win against a very good European player, right? I wouldn't say like, oh, like you beat like Leffen, like you have a god win. But like, it's not like that's not a valuable win anymore because like we still pay attention to the results that you have on like one controller or the other. So it like just depends, right? Like some people get to it real fast. Some people like it takes months for them to get to their original skill level. Like really just depends.
Yeah,
I think those
Leffens. Sorry.
I was gonna say just on the point of Leffen specifically. I mean, obviously we had different expectations for frame 1 Leffen versus the Leffen that we all know and love. But I can say to kind of give this a little bit more meat. With Leffen in particular, something I wrote about him earlier in the year was around the topic of how good is Leffen right now? How good are his frame 1 results? And something after like I think a month and a half, I just wanted to compare how he did versus different players of Europe. Like what Ambi mentioned was that he was able to, maybe slightly negative, but be competitive with Pipsqueak. Obviously, he won an entire tournament over Triff. He was able to come out ahead in sets against Frenzy. And something I do just kind of as a quick shorthand to establish what an expectation would be for someone like Leffen on a new controller would be to compare his head-to-heads and his performances with maybe someone in the US with comparable data, right? So my point of comparison for Leffen was actually relatively higher than what I thought the data had shown. Like based on what I had seen from frame 1 Leffen from like the beginning of January to the end of February, I thought the results, if you just look at the period, was something that would be believable if you told me it was Fat Goku or someone maybe a little bit above. But given that it was Leffen and that he seemed to be a very different player at the end, it seemed like, the Leffen at the end of February is very different from the one at the beginning of January. So while cumulatively that period might have him, maybe in the Fat Goku tier or something, by the end of it, in my head, I thought, if there was a hypothetical major featuring everyone, maybe I think Leffen on the box controller would probably be Sunsei caliber or something like that. So there's a lot of whenever it comes to situations like that, I always try to look at their peers and how they perform comparably.
Give a number. I'm hearing Fat Goku level, Sunsei level too. This doesn't mean anything to so many people. Give me a number.
As 16, 18, 20, like somewhere in that
22,
range.
24, 26. Okay, yeah. I guess I can see us kind of like starting to lean into the online ranking stuff a bit too much. So maybe we do table this for now and segue into the Smash World Tour stuff and then back, because I think there's a lot of interesting discussion. But the more we do it,
I do have a question lined up related to specifically because I think Wheat, you kind of brought up exactly the point I wanted to say earlier of like tournaments where people sandbag or like use secondaries or whatever, and like the question is, do you count them the same? Do you count them differently? Do you make exceptions for each individual? It's kind of like a weird balancing act. I do want to get to that when we get back to that main topic. Real quick before we pivot to Smash World Tour, again, huge shout outs to Galint Gaming. If you guys are interested in some cool content, you'll see Melee stats appearing on there alongside, I believe, Alston Melee has a piece that's going up for them as well.
Our rivals.
A few other folks doing some content, and I will actually be commentating for Top 64 on that Sunday. So if you guys are interested in watching and seeing that, that'd be pretty cool. Make sure to tune in. There's a pretty cool and sizable prize pool in there, guaranteed. I think it said like $3,000, and then they have some like bounties in there as well. Like they're doing like a bounty for whoever gets the biggest upset in Top 64 or something like that, which is kind of neat. But yeah, all that will be going down over on Beyond the Summit Smash, of course. So tune in Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 2 days from now, and there'll be some cool stuff. That said, let's talk about some Smash World Tour, I guess, because that was a thing that got announced, and I mean, I have like excitement but also a little bit mixed emotion about some of it, and I want to know what you guys think about it.
Before we do that though, just for anyone who's living under a rock, the first Smash World Tour was obviously delayed from COVID. They announced the new Smash World Tour, which format wise, correct me if I'm wrong, will be real life events exclusively. They're not actually going to be using any online seeding stuff, but obviously rankings.
Yeah, well, we know that Melee can't be played online, right?
Yes, exactly. It's impossible.
Facts.
So
it's literally impossible. It came out in 2001.
Yeah, and it's going to be circuit type format. I'm just trying to think of, is there anything kind of like just to make sure people get the recap, is there anything that kind of like format wise besides the actual, it's obviously like a global event, but it's a bit different if people haven't like checked it out from what it was in the 2020 announcement, at least.
For sure. So this is like the World Tour, like the actual Smash World Tour. Because Smash World Tour in 2020 was going to be a lot of events, like platinum, gold, and silver, at different levels of priority, and there'd be a huge leaderboard. I think it was the top 32 people or whatever would get invited. And we're doing it a little differently this year, and it's going to be a way where I think it could upset a few people, because we might not have every top level player there, but what we get in return is representation from like every region in the world almost. So what's really cool is that we have all these different regions: Central America, South America, Asia, Europe, North America, of course, and Oceania, or however you pronounce it. Yeah, Australia, New Zealand, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they all get representatives who are guaranteed to make it to the finals. So that's awesome. Like, we have not seen that many people at an event like this. Like maybe you get it at Genesis, right? And maybe you get Amsa and Spud or something at the Smash Summit, but other than that, having guaranteed people from South America and Central America going to a big tournament like this is something that not sure if we've really seen at this level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think the big thing for me, and I know that you guys are actually all on the panel of people who will be selecting the finalists, so you'll either be praised or probably crucified based on who you pick. That's the thing that kind of really stuck out to me. I believe Ultimate is not doing that for their tour. It's more of just like a traditional, like you qualify based on if you win the event or not, and then that's how you get in. How do you guys feel about the fact that like it's a group of people, like the same people that would make the top 100 rankings, for instance, but they get to decide who gets to, you know, compete in the big leagues for this huge event, you know, and what happens to I'm looking at the number breakdown right now, and it seems like the regional finals and the Smash World Tour. So the Smash World Tour finals will have, you know, at max 8 participants from North America East, West, and Europe. Those are like the 3 big contributors. I mean, how do you handle like the 9th man in those situations, or woman,
or person?
That's true. Yes.
So I believe, and I guess it's something I should know, but I believe that we're going to have 16 people that we select, and then have a in-person tournament for each region, and then the top 8 of that qualify. So It's less of a 9th person and more of a 17th person.
Sure.
Which could be worse, right? It might. This gap between the 16th and 17th best player in North America East could be closer than 8th and 9th.
I mean, that could be me, for all we know.
I don't think we're letting any Marios join.
Oh, come on, man. I think about it.
We have like a mid-tier allotment. 1 Luigi, 2 Samuses, you know. No icy
character diversity, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's gonna be tough, and it's gonna be annoying that people know our names.
Yeah, just the fact that it's like it is a selection at the end of the day, even though it like, I think for people who are in the know about Melee, being able to pick 16 people specifically from a segmented region in North America isn't that bad, all things considered. You still get 32 people from North America, which is a pretty, you know, large distribution of the top player base, I would say. I think the fact that it is a selection and not, you know, again, later on, like the 8 people who make it will make it there by virtue of performing well, of course, but like, you know, there's people that have to make that decision, and I'm sure that's going to ruffle some feathers.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective on this, I think, is like sort of 2-pronged. The first is that there's just no legal way to do this without having it be the way it is, right? And I think that people need to understand that this is like sort of the reality of the situation that we're in. Like the fact that we have people that are competent that can pick like the best players of each region, and have it be like, you know, the players that deserve to make it largely make it. You know, that's pretty nice when you consider that the alternative, which is that people have officially sanctioned events that they have to win in order to qualify, would get cease and desisted, and then we're just out of luck.
Yeah.
So there really is like no other way to do it. And that's just something that people are going to have to like get over, I think. But more to the point of you know, people being upset about the 16th or 17th selection, right? I think that, you know, people that are on the borderline, they certainly have some right to feel miffed, especially because, you know, making subjective skill judgments at like that level of granularity is I think pretty difficult. But I think that something that's useful to keep in mind is that these parts of, you know, the groups of people that are selected are, you know, seating wise the least important relative to who's actually going to qualify for the Ultimate World Tour finals, right?
Sure.
Like I think that this is like something that I think is a little bit annoying to me, because I think that you know, the odds that we like forget someone that could potentially win one of the events feels very, very low to me. It's possible that like, someone that gets in as a 16th seed could have like a huge monster run and like win the North America East bracket or something, right? But I really do think that people need to keep in perspective that the most difficult part of this process is the part that matters the least probabilistically for who's going to win the event. And saying that, we're definitely, I think, prepared to do a really good job at it anyways, just because we, pay attention to all the results all the time. So people are going to complain. That's just like an inevitability of the way that it's structured, but I think it's sort of the best way that it could be, and the difficulties are, I think, a little bit overstated by a lot of the conversation around it.
Sure. There's also another thing that I would want to mention, which is that it's not as if like if I just select all Marth players for my ballot, it's like I will have so many regional TOs from each of those places to keep me in check. Like, as far as the actual voting and balloting process goes, we have access to the regional TOs that actually run events. Mm-hmm. So it's not just my opinion in a vacuum, or Wheat's opinion in a vacuum, or Ambi's opinion in a vacuum. We will have people like Taraz from Europe tell sure. us why he really feels strongly that a player on the borderline deserves to make it over another one.
So how would that work then? Like, let's say, assuming that you'd look at, I guess, relative rankings, right? Like, or the top 16 for each, or perceived top 16 for each of these regions. It's like, what happens if a region is 16 Marths? Like, not that would happen, but it's kind of like,
then you have 16 Marths.
You have 16 Marths, and then you just play a Marth only bracket. Like,
I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Well, I'm saying is there a do you value having like a distribution of like players and characters and whatnot, or is it just like
No, I was making a joke about me being a Marth player.
Yeah, it just wasn't funny. That's where you're lost.
It's okay, whatever.
I think what Anoka's trying to say is that there's multiple layers of accountability for selecting the 16 best players in each region, which I think is the important thing. Like, it isn't really like, oh, we're going to be one person forgot, like one person. It's going to be like this whole panel of like all the people in all the regions decided you were not one of the 16 best players, and like that's going to hurt a lot of feelings, I think. But it's like we're not going to neglect players.
Listen, I mean, the point I'm trying to make here is that if Edwin can stuff 16 Marth players into one region and call it a tournament, then we can sneak one Mario player in there and give him a shot. I don't understand why that can't be something we just kind of make happen. I haven't been ranked ever, but it's fine.
I was given the rules. They said Mario's can be an ultimate. Melee.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ultimate problem is that unfortunately none filled out the paperwork.
The melee problem.
Oh, mother!
Make that joke.
It'd be really difficult. You could argue that he filled it out
wrong. We're over 2. You're supposed to pick up for me.
I think I'm hilarious right now.
The thought.
I mean, dude, the thing with this is that like people should know that it's not Edwin and I who are selecting the 16th best player in Australia.
Yeah.
Sorry, New Zealand. I don't think you're getting anyone in. I don't know, dude. Tosh hasn't been playing, and that's kind of as far as my knowledge goes. But there are TOs for each section, for each region. I think it's pretty common to know that like I don't know enough about Europe to pick their 16 best players. I don't know. I think I know their players, but I don't think I know more than 5 European TOs. So I think people should know that they're in good hands. It's not someone selecting like, oh, I've heard of Isengobay, I've heard of Dark, right? It's like the people who run every single tournament in Brazil or Chile or anything like that.
Sure. Radar, you were about to say something, right?
Yeah, 2 thoughts. I think one, I feel like if people feel that way, some of that might be the result of like poor communication on the World Tour end, because like when you go to their like about the tour page, which again I linked in chat, like they don't say like, but we have a feed of TOs like consulting for everything. Like
they actually do say that.
Where do they?
You just have to read more. Like,
which is hard.
Come on, we can't read. Are you kidding?
Oh my God.
Funny about it.
Where does it say that?
It's that all of our names are prominently displayed, and then like
they are
5 paragraphs down, it's like, yeah, so like they're also interfacing with TOs from every region. It's like the fine print. They're not in the graphic for some reason. I don't know why that was.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is that no one wants to read.
Where is this?
No,
like
reading is for nerds.
I don't see it. So like, if it isn't displayed there, then it's displayed somewhere else, which still I feel like kind of proves my point that if you go to about the tour and then it doesn't tell you like the basic stuff of like, you know.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't
see it. Get mad and go to Twitter before they like correctly look through every single thing.
I mean, that's a given, right?
One thing to be like, oh yeah, it's in the official rules or whatever. It's another thing to be like, hey guys, like we're gonna have a panel, but like as far as it looks on the website, but I knew it wasn't this way. I'm not even trying to defend Twitter shitters. I'm just saying like, you know, does someone look at this?
I agree with the greater point. The website does say in the paragraph next to the graphic that for Melee, a panel of community leaders representing regions across the globe will select finalists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess I was interpreting that as like the panel leadership team, and then that's the panel, and then they're saying like,
yeah, this is like the communication part. That's
what I mean.
There, but...
It's like
I'm with Ambi. Ambi's right. Radar's wrong. I've decided.
I'm merely saying that.
No, I agree.
Ambi's right.
Well. Sorry, Radar.
And that's the first shot of the night, boys. We got there.
That I wanted to say that again, like I obviously have thoughts about, but I'm trying to like provoke discussion. Is what do you say to people who go, yo man, East Coast is like 6 times better than West Coast, and the 16th best player on the East Coast is you know number 5 on West, and how do you deal with that? Is the answer just that this is the best that we can do, kind of like MB was alluding to a bit earlier?
Well, usually what I say to this, right, is can't wait for all 8 of the West Coast players to beat all 8 of the East Coast players, and then qualify for the World Finals or whatever. Yeah. It's like the point of the World Tour isn't to select the 32 best players in the world. It's to select like a bunch of players from all over the world so they can compete in this highly international event.
Yeah, so like the deliberate structure of the event is not. Yeah, Eric, you just put it like if people get mad, that's not like our. I don't know. Like what do you want us to do?
Yeah, I mean the goal is like you immediately have to put your money where your mouth is, right? Because you can like complain that the 8th best player in on the East Coast is better than the 5th best player, and it's like they will play in a bracket. So you can't talk that much shit like before you actually have to back it up.
Right.
I mean, you'll get stuff like this, and even you'll get people saying like, dude, like the 13th best player in West Coast wouldn't even make the top 16 East Coast, even after they don't make the event. Like, yeah, this is just how it's going to be, right? Literally every single thing we've done is trying to appeal to people who care about the game as much as us, and yet people still get mad that we don't like highlight their specific regional player as much as they wanted to. So
I also think that this is just like a greater phenomenon in ranking culture, right? Like I think that like the big thing is that like all your results because you were there for all of them, right? So it's really easy for you to be like, oh, I'm so much better than like the other player that's in this conversation because like I beat XYZ, right? And like who have you even beaten?
Oh, why
like,
easy?
Yeah, it's just like you don't know what players they've beaten because you don't follow their results, right? And like it extends outwards, right? Like oh yeah, I know all the players in my region are so good because like I've played them and they're really good, and I've paid attention to all their results because like I know who they are. And then like you compare them to like someone from another region, and like I don't even know any of the people that any of you have beaten, and it's like okay, well that's like because your knowledge is lacking about the other person's region, right? So I think that like region beef is just going to be there till the end of time. That's just sort of like how the world works when there are competitive things that are being done. But the nice thing about this is that it's like, well, if you think you're better than the other regions, like you will be able to play them in bracket, and it will be like a fun time. Like you could destroy them, and it'll be great.
Yeah,
it is like super cool to think about.
On the chain.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I also just don't see the utility just on an individual level of being like, oh well, I'm the 90th best player on the East Coast, and I really think I'd be like top 40 in the West Coast. Like, oh, okay.
I mean,
like,
yeah, that's not a fair argument.
Like 16, right?
I kind of see it like well, I don't know if you guys watch League of Legends at all, but it's just Worlds for League. The same kind of concept where you get teams from that no one's heard of from like New Zealand and what have you. That's the cool part to me, where it's like we're going to see probably 15 people out of 16 from New Zealand that not many people are super duper familiar with. Like, you know, people like us will probably know just by virtue of watching a lot of Melee and, you know, being involved in player storylines and everything like that. But
not weak though. He doesn't know that.
True. Yeah. But but like the new faces and like, you know, I see it more as like the opportunity for this to become a world's event like yearly, the same way that League does it, is insane to me. The ability for production to be super high quality, the marketing on this could be really, really, really great because it brings together literally the world. There's like so much opportunity here for really cool things. Like I'm even thinking about how League has like wild card slots and stuff like that. That like there's so many opportunities for this to really like blossom into something even bigger than it is right now.
I also think it's just good for the game. I want to see people who put a lot of time into. I want to see people who put a lot of time into the game, developing unique play styles, get opportunities that they normally wouldn't ever.
Right.
Like
right.
To me, the idea that someone like, I'll just name him for an example, like Chape would get a chance to actually get world-class practice against, or to get world-class experience against a player from the United States that he might not have an opportunity to play against is so exciting. It's like this is literally how, like, forget from a marketing perspective or even from a storytelling perspective. I just think it's really cool that, like, I think that's important too, but I think it's really cool for the individuals involved that they get a chance to actually see a potential reward from a hobby, but that's not just, you know, like intrinsic.
Yeah, it increases
value.
just like the overall level of competition too. Like it makes everyone better over time, which is obviously a very good thing. It keeps the game going.
Shout out to Chape, by the way. I think him and his entire region is nasty at Melee.
Yeah, I think that full stop, this is like the thing I'm most excited about, just like long term, is the Central and South American representation in the Smash World Tour. I think both of those regions are like super duper the ones to look out for. I think a lot of the players are like really, really exciting playstyle wise, and they're all super underrated. So very exciting.
Just keep Chile away from Samus. That's it. Just keep him away from Samus.
Yeah, I will. Oh, go ahead.
No, go on.
I just noticed in chat, and I usually try to save these for the end of the discussion, but it's very relevant, I think, for all of us in the position of like quote unquote content creators. It was Too Many Falcos in chat said, I hope people actually make content around the events from smaller regions. Otherwise, people are only going to care about US and EU. There is like an absurd amount of like opportunity, you know, aside from what I mentioned with like marketing and you know, being able to like develop this event into something like LCS level, the ability to do like, you know, insights on the players that you'll see, like here are your top 16 from Oceania or whatever, like here are your top 16 from Europe. You get like all of these cool faces, you get names to faces, all of the introductions, the storylines for each region. I know, Edwin, you said that like the competition, of course, is what's going to be rising as well, which is really important. But I mean, for me, it's kind of like, you know, it's tingling like a cool funny bone in me where I'm like, there's a lot of cool stuff that can come from this in this year, and I'm really excited for it.
It's going to be sick. Like so Melee's built off of the story of Armada coming from like literally nowhere. And this idea of a region that no one ever cared about, like birthing a top player. And it's really cool that I don't think we're going to get an Armada from Brazil or whatever, but it's really cool that we kind of are going back to like the mythos of maybe we'll see some truly top level talent emerging from regions that we didn't know about. Right now, Smash World Tour is kind of centered around regions that we already know for logistical reasons too. Like South America could very well just see Chilean players and Brazilian players. They actually cannot connect to people in like other regions of South America for whatever reason. The way that the routing's done there, you'll see that in like CS:GO majors too. Like the Brazilians playing like Peruvians or whatever is apparently worse than Brazilians playing Americans. So there's like, we won't see entirely randoms yet, and there still are big regions of the world where they don't have qualifiers. There's no African qualifier. Oddly enough, Spark is in Pakistan right now, and there's no region that covers Pakistan represented by the Smash World Tour.
Oh, geez.
So
okay.
I don't know.
India also is not covered.
India, yeah, there's huge places in the world that we don't know if they have Smash scenes, or we don't know if they have thriving Smash scenes. So that's probably why they haven't been counted. But who knows? If this is a success, like maybe we will see the first Indian Smasher who like really pops off on a national level. Something like that would be super cool.
I just love the. I want to give a shout out to Aiden Calvin, because especially among Melee Stats, one of our favorite series that it wasn't every year, but we loved Don't Park on the Grass and the spirit of internationalism that it brought. I remember, I think, I forget if it was 2018 or 2016, but seeing Spud play Rudolph, that's New Zealand versus Japan. How often do you see that? And Aiden just had he had his finger on the pulse of the European scene, especially, but he was very adamant about centering Don't Park on the Grass each year as the tournament series that would fly out international talent.
Yeah, it was the showcase of talent. It wasn't even international. It didn't like stop there. We saw like Stango was at Don't Park on the Grass.
Yeah,
really going to stuff. Not that he ever really went to stuff. But yeah, Aiden is one of my favorite people in Smash. Number one on my list of people to hug when I can hug people.
He's definitely up there for sure.
He wouldn't make hug tier for me, though.
You don't hug anyone, man.
Really?
I like Aiden, but not hug. I'm not a hugger.
You're not even gonna hug me.
That's kind of fucked up, man.
Yeah, dude.
Aiden's such a great guy. Whenever I get his DM, like I find him in my Discord DMs. He's always planning something, like a mad
He's definitely a planner.
He was like, who would you say the 16th best Canadian player is right now? And I don't know what he's doing with this. I'll get a random thing. Do you think Sunsei is like top 25 level? I'd be like, sure.
He's just like writing it on a corkboard with like really yarn and shit, like with like all lines coming across with players and everything. Just trying to solve a mystery that isn't there yet.
It's amazing.
I loved Aiden. Just last thing about him, I loved his insistence that Spud was legit. Like, before he beat SFAT for the first time, Aiden was like, oh yeah, Spud has Kalamazoo and SFAT in his bracket. Free. He's gonna just...
Dude, I've been there for 8
months. Oh
no. Here we go.
All right, I'm not changing the cameras this time. Oh, mother. Oh, wait. When he comes back, it's gonna switch back. I guarantee you. There's got to be a way to lock cameras on whatever video service when people drop. Okay, he's back.
Yeah, I think OBS Ninja does it pretty well. But
oh, really? Okay.
I will say, with regards to Aiden and Spud, that event sticks out as particularly funny for me because Aiden started side betting Spud versus SFAT before Spud beat Kalamazoo.
Yeah, how insane!
He got insane odds for it.
Yeah, that's
people were like, dude, he's like not even gonna make it to SFAT.
Yeah.
He's gonna lose to Kazu.
He knew.
Aiden was like, no, dude, he's
like the most exciting thing.
His proof for it was that Spud would like beat Armada's in friendlies, but lose to the Fox.
He would talk about, and in the classic Aiden way, like he didn't leave any specific detail out. He was like, we were in like a high-rise apartment in Sydney, some like beautiful apartment. And I'm like, dude, I don't need to hear about this. But he's like, and in that apartment, Spud was going like 60-40 with the peach. I'm telling you.
I can hear this in Aiden's voice. That's so funny.
Like he's literally, if one of us just like had whatever, I don't know how he runs these events, but if he was like, if someone who cared about Melee as much as us just wanted to run events, like he DM'd me one time, and this will sound so dated, but he was like, I want to get a tournament just so IBW can play Rocky.
Damn.
Like I swear, he just like picks 2 random people, and he's just like, how can I like form a tournament around this?
That's so awesome.
And you look at Don't Park in the Grass or Saving Mr. Lombardi or anything, like so much of the stuff that he does and the stuff that he does with BTS is like based around him just being a fan of Melee first and then organizer second.
Wait, guys, I have a quote. I have a quote. This is really important for this situation, okay? this defines my thoughts on international representation at Melee tournaments. Internationalism is the bane of chauvinism. Without sincere internationalism, there is no salvation for humanity.
Who do you guys want to see most if you had to pick one or two international players? Who are you guys like most excited about?
I'm sorry. Okay, so
what Edwin said.
So yeah, for me, the obvious bet, which is I think what a lot of people are excited for, and they're like the ones that people know less about, but I'm honestly excited to potentially see AMSA again the most, like far and away.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a gimme answer, yeah, but that's kind of like we missed this guy so much. Like I want to see him again. To be honest, I think like with this last year of like online events and like things kind of being a bit more sporadic in terms of tournaments and really being in the know when certain events were going down, like I have not a lot of an idea of what the landscape even looks like internationally, and that's kind of just like interesting to me as a whole, because it's like to me, like anyone can really can go in there for that top 16 or whoever is going to compete in those regional finals and really impress me. So do you guys have any like standout people that you're excited to see?
I feel like Europe in general to me is interesting. Like, you know, I just posted an interview with Pipsqueak on my YouTube channel, but we spoke and I've really been liking kind of what I've been seeing from him. I feel like Triff would be interesting. Like there's just a lot of European players. Like the way he described it, to kind of quote him, was that like everything prior to that was sort of like very disconnected, and sort of each country would play like the people within the country, but not really others. Even if geographically speaking, you'd think like, oh, it's kind of comparable like state to state for certain areas. And now with Slippy, it's like Europe is almost a region. And so everyone's kind of, you know, rising together in experience. You know, maybe I'm misquoting them a bit, but I think because of that, they're sort of like isolated and not playing anyone, but all getting better, maybe at a rate faster than other people. So I'd be really curious to see how they kind of stack up.
I think Pipsqueak is a great answer. We haven't, so he did come to America. I forget which event it was. I think it might have been Genesis. But he actually hasn't been here in a while. He came for Summit 9 because he was Kristen's coach.
Yeah.
And he won a free trip to an American major, which is going to be Genesis, and he had some stuff going on in his life, and he had to pass. And then, of course, there's no American majors ever again.
Ever.
So, like I feel so, you know, like that's such a sad story that we could have seen with Genesis. But in the time since, he's like leveled up super hard.
Yeah, he's much better, I think, compared to then.
I think he's known for the Leffen wins, but people might discount that because that's box Leffen. Dude, he's still so good.
Yep.
Top 5 right now. The only European who I'd want to see over him is like maybe Prissett, who I literally don't know.
I think he just hates net play. That's the problem. I think Prissett is like the sickest player.
I don't know what he hates. I think he just loves only playing friendlies. Because I think even when there was LAN, you know, he entered only Norwegian stuff and maybe like an air or something. But yeah, I mean, if I could see a Prissett and in 2021, dude, I'd be hogging.
Prissett has like 5 characters that would wash so many like strong
5v5 Iron Man. I like only the gods could handle him. I think we might be pumping him up too much, but
he's very good. I will say that my pick for this, like the international player that I'm really excited to see, is Lag.
Yes. Oh my God. Really, yes. Hell yeah.
Lag on LAN. I just want to see it, dude. I want to see a top 100 Roy. I want to see it. I just think Lag is so good, and I have no idea if it's just because he's like 130 ping.
Like lag switching people legitimately. It's like,
I'm very excited.
He's being either Mario players playing from.
Yeah, there's gonna be the exhibition. Don't test lag.
I think they've played a few money matches.
Have they?
Yeah, or they've done a few like exhibition sets. I don't know if they were money matches, but I believe Zane won them, or he came out ahead.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I remember they played that set that one time, and lag went Marth, and he got destroyed. And then like midway through the set, he switched to Roy, and Roy ditto Zane, and then won the Roy ditto, and then switched back to Marth, and then lost with Marth. And afterwards, he tweeted out like, "I am the best Roy," and then Isn't
that just like what people do versus don't test? Didn't Lotfi do that? Like Lotfi goes Fox, loses every game, and then counterpicks Roy on FD and wins, and then like goes back to Fox and loses.
That's really fun.
Like I think that's just a thing you do versus don't test me. Dude, the sick thing about lag is that Mexico, is actually North American by what we would consider geography standards, but they're actually in Central America for this Smash World Tour. So people who like might be borderline, like Eddie Mexico or Lag, are now pretty much locks. I mean, who knows what the future will hold in the next couple months, but dude, we could very well see Lag like flown out to a huge event.
Yeah,
it should be so great.
Have to play like Leffen round 1 or something.
It is crazy to think like the smaller like regions, quote unquote, because they only have a handful of people that will be able to actually make it there. So like, North America, East, West, Europe, we kind of have a good idea of who's going to make it there. But I feel like Oceania is like, who's going to be the one person that wins and then makes it over there? That's going to be like an interesting storyline to think about.
I think it's interesting, or depending on whether or not Spud enters. I think
he's
true.
He hasn't gone to much. My pick, I was gonna pick J-Cam. I think that guy is hella good. Every time I've seen him, he's been like super impressive, both eye test wise and results. I would love to see how he would fare against like the top American players.
J-Cam's so sick, but I hope XL0 washes him. Like something about, I don't know, the Peach lover in me. Just if XL0 goes back to like 2014 level or whatever he was at, and just compete at like top 60 level again.
Dude, he's hella fast. I played XL0. He like moves like crazy with Peach.
Radar, who you got?
I picked Pipsqueak or pretty much anyone
true.
good in Europe. That's how I started. Yeah. No, I think Pipsqueak just plays like he called himself the best tech chasing Fox, even better than Leffen in Europe, which I was like, all right, get some some big talk there. But I do like, he'll post stuff. I remember he posted this like forward air tech chase extension thing on FD. He's like, this is like the optimal way you like from around say 90 to 110, like forward air, extend the tech chase, and then I think like finish off with up smash. I was just like, this guy really sees the game in like not like necessarily a different way, but I don't know. I think he was speaking about how like Europe views the punish game like in particular in kind of a similar way. Like he talked about how North America has like a more diverse style generally, whereas everyone he plays in Europe, it's like punish basically. So
yeah, I've talked about this a little bit. I think that it's really interesting looking at the European players and seeing like how like PAL like changed the way that they think about the game relative to Americans. Because I think if you look at the way that a lot of Americans play the game in particular, a lot of them play like super spoiled by the fact that all their characters are so broken. But in Europe, like for the longest time, everyone had to make do with like substantially nerfed out versions of their characters. So when they all got buffed, they all like retain this like extract value perspective compared to other players. So I think that looking at all the European players, they all play like super modern styles compared to North America, which I think is super fun to see.
I will say, if there's one region of players that gives us a lot of results that we don't necessarily know how to relate to the rest of the world, I think a lot of top level Japan is in a really interesting space because contrary to what you think, like historically they do very well against AMSA, and I don't know if it's because AMSA doesn't take competing there as seriously, or if it's Yoshi related, or if it's because of or if it's just that they're that good. But whenever I see Sane, Shippu, like Gucci when he was around, like
Shunsuke?
that, and Shunsuke recently. But like that
Super
whole
good.
caliber of players, I've always been very interested to see how they'd fare in multiple in a lot more sets against a rest of I guess a good way to put it, is a measured field, because I don't really have a good handle on how good those guys are.
It's funny that you brought up Shipu, because I actually talked about him in my Apex video that I released, and it was like looking through his profile was like, I literally was just like, holy shit, like this guy's fucking insane, because I don't think he placed lower than top 3 at any Japan event he went to. And then he went to Apex 2015, which was his first like out of state or country event, and he got 113th. So it was like, you know, I know like it's like one tournament isn't enough of a sampling to understand how he's going to
match of that tournament.
That's true, but he also lost to Alex 19. So.
Oh yeah, Pete, that happens. Didn't he
Alex was good.
He got a free trip for that.
He qualified by beating AMSA at Battle Gateway. So,
yeah, I remember watching that and being so hyped, and then seeing his, like, I don't think he even had a stream set at Apex, maybe. Whatever it was, I was just kind of bummed. I was like, oh, okay, that's what happens, I guess.
Yeah, so I think, like, for stuff like that, it's just, like, I'm so interested in seeing how 2020 fares, or 2021, I'm sorry, I'm still fast warping through the last year, but
we get it.
Yeah, it was, you know, how the new year fares for these, like, countryed players that, you know, mostly perform incredibly well within their own regions, but we don't have a lot of data for them elsewhere. So that's really cool to me.
I would actually, he hasn't been around for a while, but I do wonder how good Rudolph is right now, because just to like bring this back on the topic of Japan, in the last like 7 years, like even during the AMSA era of Japan, like if you look at their different regional number ones, I think Rudolph was like the best one in that region. That dude, like we were talking pretty favorably about Shipu before within the Japanese player pool, but like Rudolph was a really big roadblock for Shipu for a long time, and that dude just like destroyed everyone in Japan for about like a year and a half. I wonder I wonder if we talk about international players that we would want to see in the World Tour, how they would do like against a broader player pool. He's actually he's actually one of the other people I think of, but he hasn't been very active. So I wonder what he's been up to.
I think the thing that
I think Rudolph is particularly funny because I think that like sort of even Rudolph had no idea. I think that what's eternally frozen in my mind is it's him like popping off super hard after
O'Reilly.
Yeah,
like he beat O'Reilly, who's like this pretty good Midwest Falcon player, right? And he like jumped out of his chair and like tried to surf on the chair. Like it was like this ridiculous pop off. And then like the immediate next round, he beat Drugfox. And it was he like awkwardly did the same pop off that he did against O'Reilly, and it was so funny.
It was like, much less passionate though.
Yeah, he was like, wait, I already did this.
I've been here before.
You gotta dole them out. You can't go out of the gate with all those pop offs.
Dude, just imagine playing I like O'Reilly. I'm a big O'Reilly fan. Just imagine playing Drugfox after him, and then in your head you're like, this is approximately the same caliber of pop-off as beating O'Reilly.
So I think everyone comes away with that pretty happy except for Drugfox.
Yeah.
In chat, Too Many Falcos brings up kind of an interesting point. Like right now, they're talking about how are players from Japan get chosen if they aren't having Slippy events. I thought they were still having Slippy events. It's just like people like AMSA aren't entering them.
I think it was like public perception is kind of like bad for people. Like a lot of Japanese culture doesn't really like that they're using this, you know, build of the game. But that's like the TLDR I got. I could be totally wrong on that.
Like I know
I think it's a little bit up in the air for me with regards to Japan. You got to keep in mind that they can't have prize pools at tournaments because of gambling laws in Japan. And there's also like this weird thing where like all the top players in Japan like live in the same apartment, so like they know how good they are. So it's a little bit weird. Like we're sort of expecting that to shake out pretty favorably regardless of how it happens. But I think Japan more than other regions, we're sort of trusting the regional people that are associated with Japan because it's really hard to say.
Yeah.
I think in general, though, the whole event is interesting to me just because, like, you know, maybe something like Japan is more of an exception with the Slippy stuff, but like for most regions, I feel like if we did this 5 years ago, it obviously would still be interesting, but I feel like it would be less interesting in some ways because I feel like North America had so much of an edge, and then now like the borders are starting to either widen or blur in terms of regions. So like now, some like Europe as a scene might be more comparable to North America, whereas before it was like it's not that way at all.
Are you saying that because we have some inkling or an idea of what we have missed out on, that it's more exciting that we'd get to learn more about it? Or
like more that just I think people are better is really what I'm saying. So like before,
I see.
If we bring in a bunch of people from other regions, like obviously we have the kind of Javi being PPMD kind of moments and stuff. Like it's not like it doesn't happen, but I feel like now it's not, hopefully not going to be the kind of thing where we see a bunch of players from regions we're maybe not as familiar with and they just get like bodied, like, because I think there are enough resources to improve, even if you don't necessarily have like as good players, just because of how far along we are in the game and how many kind of tutorials and sets and stuff that you can kind of like, you know what I mean? Like the state of the game is very different.
I think it's kind of close to how, like, the same as how I mentioned LCS Worlds is like there are teams that are very clearly better than, some of the off-region entries that you'll get, and that's just a fact of most, I guess, international competition, is that there will just be a skill discrepancy across some regions.
The Olympics is like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of comes with the territory.
You expect that regardless. I'm just saying. I think than it would have been maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I know you just mentioned Javi, which, as a side note, does he play still? Because I'd be interested in seeing him. And I think, like, on that same note, the cool thing to me, in addition to all of the cool like marketing and content and storyline opportunities that I see through Smash World Tour, is the people who have been watching Melee for a long period of time, which I assume is most of us in this call, will have a treat. Like, Radar, you just said Javi. It's like, imagine if you see a Javi, where it's like the last time we really got a good look at him was probably in like 2014 maybe, or like around that era, when he was kind of like taking off as like a popular name. But like people like Javi's and like the other lesser known people who were really solid in those earlier eras, I think that's like a really cool opportunity to be able to see, who's going to come out of the woodwork for each of these regions. Because like we said at the beginning of the talk, it's not just a straight top 32 on the global ranking. It is region specific, so we're going to see some new faces in there, or familiar faces from a while ago.
I think the person that perfectly fits that is Dark, probably.
Yes.
I think South America probably might have a few people who we might have seen them before a few years ago, like AskTheMixup. I think we could see. Yeah, they just have like such a deep roster of people who are veterans of the scene. When you look at Europe, we might not have like the same feeling with something like that, even though they've got people who've been playing forever. Like, we know how Amsa is, right? Dutch Amsa. It's not shocking to see him come back to playing. But dude, if we see Dark again for the first time in how long, or AskTheMixup, or any of these top players from South America, yeah, I mean, I think that like perfectly encapsulates exactly what you're saying.
It's crazy to me that like
Dark is playing. He entered Smash Blunt, right?
He beat Riken at Smash Blunt. That was a really good victory for him.
I was gonna say it's crazy to me that like the people, I don't know, do we still call them tadpoles if they're from the Slippy era? I thought that was like a meme that someone on Reddit said at one point. But like, you know what I mean? The people who came into Melee, competitive Melee through rollback net play as of probably
the people who don't know Crush or Silent
Yeah, Wolf, exactly. So it's like, for people like us, the fact that Dark could be like, you hear, oh, Dark could be getting into this bracket, there's a possibility, and we're like, holy shit, that's awesome. But then the newbies and the Zoomers are like, what's a Dark? I don't even know what that is.
Dude, I want Alex19 to come back. I want Alex19 to come back and be like nasty again.
Dude, you could pick Flash.
I would be happy to see Alex back. I don't know if he'd be my first pick, but I think that he's a very underrated player.
I would say no to Alex.
Very underappreciated.
I mean, yeah, I think we could all go on for hours about, like, I would love to see Fly Amanita play. I would love to see like the old school ICs like before the wobbles time, and see how they perform in a 2021 meta. There's a wish list there that I'm sure we all have of people that we would want to see again.
I think the thing for me, like, I guess maybe to sort of elaborate on what I was saying before, is I feel like the existence of like Uncle Punch training pack and stuff like allows it so that you can just like, if you were say a New Zealand player or something who got selected, you're like, I don't know, 15th on this list or whatever. I feel like you could take it quite seriously and grind even mostly in kind of a solo setting and improve quite a bit quite quickly if you were really, really dedicated, especially because like, not trying to knock Smash players because I think we've gotten a lot better at this, but like the work ethic isn't always comparable to like other esports necessarily. So I think if someone was like, yo, I'm going to play like it's actually gotten a lot better at the top. Like the very top players are playing a lot. But I could see gaps like shrinking really quickly if regions that were otherwise maybe not getting as much time in the limelight to start like going, okay, I'm going to grind. I want to make this money. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm kind of trying to speak to. So
no,
Radar,
I understand completely.
Radar, is there anyone from Vancouver in particular that you'd want to tell us about that you're a super believer in by any chance?
I feel like I haven't played in a Vancouver event. Like I've probably said this before, but my experience like moving to Vancouver was like I moved, just started like working, and then like in a year was like in a car accident where I like couldn't go do anything for a while. So, like I went to some events early on, and I still like know a lot of Vancouver Smashers, but like I haven't been playing enough even now actively for different reasons to be able to like speak to players that I think would be like, whoa, they're kind of low key going to be really, really good. I always like watching Elliot play. I feel like he I don't know, just a fun player. Like, so it'd be cool to see him do well, but yeah, I can't really speak to like who in the last say 6 months is really, really rising up as a.
I don't think you need to qualify. I think Elliot is a perfectly fine answer.
Yeah, that was what I thought.
Yeah, you beat me. Yeah, because if you didn't say it, I would say that's a weird way of saying Elliot. But,
I don't know if he's playing that much though. Like it's funny because I don't know. He's just a interesting player. Like the kind of, but I don't know if he's always kind of full, like 100% melee at certain times. Like sometimes I'll message him.
Yeah, he's a child, so.
Well, yeah, well, not as much anymore. I think. Like, isn't he like? He's still not 18. I think.
He's still in high school, man.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm losing track of time too, because like he would have been like
they grow up so fast.
He might be now. I don't know, but he's definitely like a kid
for sure. But I think your point about different regions like kind of upping their game is spot on. Like how would we even know how to quantify how Europe is doing right now versus how North America is? Or like let's say we have an online ranking or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How would that even work?
What a podcaster.
Wow,
dude.
This is so interesting that you just somehow managed to seamlessly bring this up. I'm gonna just casually press shift and right arrow on my keyboard, and we can talk about this next topic. But I think the first answer to that, just straight up, is an event like the Smash World Tour. The long and short of it is like you get an event where you pit all of the regions of dedicated part of the world, like within some type of limitation, and you throw them all into a tournament, and then whoever wins, that's the best region, or at least until the next year happens. And then you just do it all over again. But I think there's a lot of interesting considerations that need to be made, especially in this last year for an online rankings. I'm sure the job that the three of you guys may have in the future is not easy by any means. So I certainly would be interested in hearing like exactly how you guys go about creating a rankings list just in general, and then I think specifically how it's going to vary for this online era versus when we had all these LAN events.
Yeah, I feel like this is we should lead here because
I saw Wheat smile in the corner.
I feel like I've just been jumping in on everything. I want to give people other chance to talk. Yeah, I mean the thing with online rankings is who knows, right? We could very well not see them. PG's been super cool about not forcing a ranking. And the thing with Melee is that when you first get into Melee, you think that things should exist because they have to, right? It's like, it's like, oh, we're a big esport. Like, we must have a ranking. We must have this tournament. But then you get further in and you realize that this is only happening because of, like, the forward momentum of the people who care, right?
Right.
Like, there's no big company that would hoist us up. If everyone stopped caring about running tournaments, then tournaments would die. If Sheridan and Bobak decided that they didn't care to run Genesis wouldn't come back. So the thing with the top 100 is that there might not be a huge push right now from the people who run it to make an online ranking, possibly because of how hard it might be, or possibly because of how uninterested we might be. But the lovely thing about Smash is that it's open for anyone then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you want, we're actually might see some regions, some smaller regions, we've already seen make online rankings. Like, we've seen the New Jersey online PR, which I know it's small, but that is an online ranking. We might see...
Like, don't get us started on New Jersey. That's like a 30-minute detour.
I think the thing for me is, like, and we mentioned this in our last episode with Waffle Zoo and Blur. Edwin, I think I actually caught you in the chat in there as well, so you might know where I'm going with this. But and Radar, of course, feel free to chime in as well. In my opinion, and I obviously understand and respect and empathize with the sheer amount of work that has to go into creating a rankings in general, online or not. The thing for me that I see when it comes to a ranking system for this game that's kind of like what you said, Wheat, is surviving through the passion of its members. The rankings kind of, in my opinion, directly supports like the ecosystem of Smash, because it allows people to say, I can put in my Twitter bio, hey, I was the number 4 ranked player in online New Jersey Melee, and that's why you should sponsor me. But, like, it's important either way, because it is like a number is important to a sponsor, it's important to a corporation, because it shows them what kind of direct value that company will get from them if they choose to pick up the player to represent that organization. So it's kind of like, I understand that it's difficult and that it's driven by the people who make it happen, but it's like, it really does help a lot. Like, it needs to be something, in my opinion, that has to happen in order for the game to kind of continue to elevate itself.
The thing, so, like, being basically everyone in this call, even if they're not directly involved in the ranking process, understands that, like, any project or anything in Melee is, like, often unpaid, often, like, ridiculous, passion. Like, even if it's a YouTube video that you see has ads on it, you're probably not making much money. And, like, so I think both Walt and I, like, for sure are always going to be, like, sympathetic of this is a lot of work kind of perspective. I think what I would push back on more is Wheat's idea of, like, this is the Melee community, you can just kind of do stuff, because, like, while, again, all of us, like, Walt didn't get a job making Melee documentaries, you know what I mean? Like, he just kind of did them and then they grew. But at the same time, like, if someone, like, it's hard for me to totally agree with the idea that if a bunch of people were like, yo, so I made a Melee ranking, here's how it is, like, that it would be taken as seriously as if, people who have a, reputation, do you know what I mean? Like,
but what if it got a lot of upvotes on Reddit?
Well, that's the thing, is it's like, I feel like it's the same as Blur was talking about, making a tier list. And of course, that's a project that someone could kind of lead. And it seems like, yeah, Practical Task actually is leading that project. But do you know what I mean? Like, it's like if I just said, hey, I spoke with, Cody and fucking, like, these random people, and here's the tier list. And even if it was, like, well done, like,
I feel like that's everything I do ever. So
yeah, but, like,
I feel like I'm just a random guy and I randomly do
Andy's
things.
crying internally.
I'm like, no.
Yeah, I mean, like, I agree with this, right? Like, so when LANs were around, PG would put out a top 50 or a top 100, and Melee Stats we made our own, like, quarter rankings if there was a lot going on in a specific quarter, and obviously, what's going to be in the bio, right? It's going to be the big PG one. But the fact of the matter is that, like, you might, if you're a big company, you might not want to have a ranking that explicitly is an online result, right?
Sure.
That's unfortunately, that's probably, like, I don't know. Despite the fact that I've worked on the top 100, I'm not in the know of whether or not PG wants to do it for any legal reasons. But like, I can understand a big company like PG or Red Bull not being chill with making a list, and it's like, here's the best Melee players that they played online illegally. And I think if you don't have that, if you have a drought, like the last top 100 we saw was in January. I think it released the end of January, in 2020. Like, if you put up a list and you said, I interviewed or I asked them for ballots from all these people, from these TOs and players, you know, do you get the same like prestige as if PG releases one? No, maybe not. But if you're kind of in like a desert, right? If you're the oasis of rankings, then people do it. And dude, people don't even care what they put in their bio. Do you know what Ginger's bio says? It says he's top 15 in the world. He was never top 15. Dude, you just put that there. Who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, my point is, if someone wants to do it, I think that like the world is open to them, and there might be more of a reason to do European online ranks or North American online ranks or North American East or whatever.
Right.
Like, but at that point, it just gets granular, and you're like, well, why am I making a top 50 like for this one small region, which is going to change next week when Bobby Big Balls inevitably loses to like Kada. I don't know. Like, I think that Melee is able to survive on the passion of people. And as it stands right now, I can understand the passion not being all there in terms of Melee results. Like you guys said, right? Walt, you said that you didn't really watch net play results?
Not a ton. I mean, like, you know, a handful for where I have videos, but
you can catch up on many net play results by following the Melee Stats Twitter.
Yo, true.
Pod.
I do actually read that for updates on like
I do read those
small things.
They are
it does help.
I have a quick point that I want to make about this, which is that that online events are very, very low stakes, and I think that this is like it's something that's worth like, you know, thinking about for like a brief period of time, right? Because like there are so many net play tournaments, right? There's like 10 every day. Like you need to be like, you know, deranged Melee stats people to follow all the Melee the online net play results, right? So in like a lot of ways, the whole COVID Slippy era has been like this giant forced off season for Melee, right? And I think that this is pretty interesting when you think about like the type of stuff that a bunch of people are doing. Like a bunch of people are in like super, you know, matchup understand mode right now. Some people are switching controllers. You know, people are still entering stuff even though they're on different controllers. You know, there's like a lot of stuff going on that's like, you know, not just trying to perform well at the tournament, right? And like I think the big thing is that like if there's a big major in like the actual IRL world, you know, you have to, you know, block out a weekend, you have to fly there, and like hundreds of people fly to the same location to play in a tournament together, and like the stakes are like very high for this reason alone, right? And you know, you could say like, oh well, you know, like this online tournament has a big prize pool, but like you're not flying to the tournament, right? Like the stakes I think are that it was a big investment of your time to spend on this particular event, and people prepared for it, and then now they're doing well. And like you could argue that the net play grinders are trying to approach this really similarly between LAN and net play events. But I think what's important to note is that like sort of part of the reason I think that online rankings are like a little bit less in demand relative to like IRL tournament rankings is that like there's no like genesis for online tournaments. Right, like there's no big house for online tournaments, unfortunately.
Pick a different example, man.
Yeah, it came out of my mouth, and I was like, oh wait,
too soon.
But yeah, like, go ahead.
the only other thing I'd want to add about online rankings is that I think we should be. I just want to go back to what Walt, you were talking about, the benefits of online rankings and how they could potentially help like player careers and in terms of like their professional opportunities.
Sure.
And while I think that's true, that's definitely true. I think it's also, I think like the true benefit that comes from online rankings is just, you know, like, to put it really bluntly, it's just content. It's fun to have rankings. It's fun to send DMs to your friends like, oh, can you believe that they ranked this guy this?
Right.
Oh my god, these, like, it's just a fun thing to have in the scene because it's content. And I feel like that's kind of, I feel like it's not a bad thing to say that you want rankings because they're fun and because you can talk about them. Like, I think, like, I get that the professional opportunities thing is definitely true. It's true that sponsors differentiate between top 25 and top 50. I think all that stuff is very important for panelists to consider and for the public to know. But I think if we're really just being honest about like the main benefit of rankings to most people in the community, it's just that they're fun and they provide some kind of centralized marketing resource for the scene. I think that's the best way to explain why people care about them so much. I get what you're saying about the professional opportunities. I think that's true. I think that's true, but I think the real thing for like the average person, like I think the best way to sell their importance to the average person is that they're just fun to have, and if you believe in them, you should want them. And I think everyone says they want rankings, but you know, like, there's a reason why the closest thing you have to rankings is a 3,500 word preview column that I'm doing for each region because I'm bored. You know what I mean? Like, that's very different than, like, everyone says they want rankings, but nobody's willing to push for it, and that's because the elusive demand is high, but the actual demand, I think, is not high enough to where someone is willing to step in and where someone is willing to apply enough pressure on this kind of synthesizes with what Radar was saying before, where I agree, Radar. Like, if someone just put forward like a random top 100, that wouldn't mean as much as MPGR. Like, I agree that those two things would not be equal. But I think on the other hand, if there really was like a massive demand for online rankings that we thought deserved its own discrete place in the scene, I do think that we would see it. I think the scene is close knit enough to where, and at least
it really just depends on how badly people want to talk about the rankings. And I think people are more interested in talking about the relative rankings of each region right now compared to globally.
Sure, yeah.
I think
or the relative ranking among their peers, and why this person who performed worse at them at the last event shouldn't have been featured in my top 100 preview. My God, you guys need to get a life. Like, I'm giving you validation by putting
teeth, dude.
Whatever. It's just so annoying. It's like you literally are listing 100 people for a region is so difficult. It's like if your name is mentioned, like that's me trying to be nice. That's not like me trying to say you're bad or that like someone else doesn't deserve the spot or whatever. People are just like, I get it, dude. Melee's tough. Like, playing the game and making content for it delivers like no reward. Just like, you're all dumb. You're all dumb. No, I'm just kidding.
One thing I would say though is, like, I get what you're saying about it is like, you know, rankings are fun and I think that's valid. I don't see that as disconnected. Like, say for example, if there's the new NBA season and there's all these podcasts and talk shows about which team is better than which team, and that's just all for fun. And it's like, yeah, but that's also like, that content is consumed and like people pay for it and there's eyes on it and there's like ads and money and so what I guess I can't help but think is like what it feels like you guys are saying, which, as you guys know, I think is valid, is sort of like the people who do the rankings, there isn't a demand for it. But I don't think that necessarily, like, if you were to survey the full community, I don't think, like, the problem with the COVID online world right now, and this goes back to like what Ambi was saying, is sort of like, I think some people are really invested in online tournaments, but the problem is that their opponent might not be. And before there was like a mutual, we're at this event and we're very serious. Like we've talked about this in previous episodes, but like when Zane and Mango play, you don't get this feeling that like it's casual fun, like yo, whatever, who cares?
Right.
But when Zane and I don't know, like Zamu or something plays, like he's kind of like or Ryobeat or something.
Zamu like this, man.
Yeah, I love Zamu.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm not shitting on them. I'm saying they are like not into. They tweet constantly about how they're not really into the online stuff as much, and it's not me calling them out. It's me using them as examples of like.
Right. No, I see what you're saying.
They have spoken publicly about like, man, I just don't find this as fun. But
something to work towards.
The thing that I can't help but feel is like, isn't this all sort of like feeding into everything else? You know what I mean? Like if you start to like, does any of this really matter? Well, then does the demand...
Right. So I agree with you, like in a vacuum, right? Like I think that like you're objectively correct here that like it's all like sort of interconnected, right? But when you think about like a top 100 list, right? Like fundamentally, a top 100 list is a list you use to determine whether X player is better than Y player, right? And I think that this is a particularly interesting problem for most years because the European players typically have a lot of data against each other, but not much data internationally. And you have to use limited inference from the limited available traveled people that have sets against other people in order to like determine like the stacks on both sides, like what order you should draw from them, right? But the problem is that you don't have that anymore, right? Which is why I think that the rankings content is like a little bit more falling to the wayside at the moment. And I think the easiest way to describe this is just to ask you, like, who do you think is better right now, Leffen or IBW? And I think
it's
that's
an impossible question,
absurdly unanswerable question, right? Because you know, like, there's just no way to know. Like, there's no like bridge you could use to connect two different communities, right? Like the pools. It's so interesting, right? Because in the Slippy era, like there's so much data, right? Like all of these players are playing against each other all the time. And the pools are closing so much more than they were before, right? Because no one's traveling between regions to give us information about how to compare regions to each other. So I think global rankings, like they sort of can't exist right now because there's literally no way to do it unless you just do it from like eye test gameplay stuff. And why I think stuff like Smash World Tour is like really exciting for people because you can actually compare people within regions that are close enough together. Like people complain even just about like the distance that Mango and Zane play. Like if you're like just like casually following an M-play tournament, like you'll play like, you know, some guy from Arizona will play some guy from like, you know, Massachusetts, and they'll play on AB paying, and one player will lose, and they'll be like, I'll never play on a coast-to-coast tournament ever again, and like the next week they enter a coast-to-coast tournament again. But like even then, right? Like even that distance is enough for people to complain about like the comparison between skill levels not being enough. So it's very different compared to like an international world ranking that you can actually do this sort of comparison for.
Sure. I think the go ahead.
Yeah.
I think the point that like where me and Radar were kind of jiving was that whether the ranking is made for professionalism or for, you know, personal or fun gain, be it content, bragging rights, what have you, all of it contributes to the like circle of life that is Smash as an esport. Sure. Because it all adds in to, you know, it gets more people to watch the content, it gets more people to invest in tournaments, it gets more people to participate in tournaments, which in turn makes more money for the players. And then that in turn gets more people on the professional side to kind of be interested in the game. You know, I'm overblowing it a bit, and I see Wheats reacting to that. I get it.
Look, I can go on. I got a lot of thoughts. I'll let you finish, and then I'll.
No. I mean, that's like basically it when it comes to like, you know, like just one to two like A/B test. Should we have an online rankings? If I tweeted that right now, I'm fairly confident a large majority would vote yes. If I made a poll of should we make an online ranking, yeah, we should, like no brainer. But it's like obviously there's difficulties that come with it. There's not a lot of intrinsic value depending on which way you look at it. Yes, I understand that, I agree with that, and I respect it. I think the point about like a region specific ranking is probably an important discussion to go to. I do see Edwin, you want to interject as well. So I'll let you take the floor on that at that point.
Yeah, I think where my divergence with you and Radar is that I don't think that it's not like we don't have a monopoly on following the scene and like watching set results, right? So to me, I understand what you're saying about like if you feel like the scene is missing something from people who should be doing it, I think that is a totally like I don't think that's an unreasonable ask, and I don't think it's and I can understand that it's not as simple for most people as, oh well, like if I don't do it, someone else will. I get that, you know, it's not like it's not a reasonable ask of most people, but I think in a scene like Melee, I just always think it like for me at least maybe I'm too deep into this, but like I don't think the kind of knowledge that you would need to make the top 100 rankings, like even within a region, are like.
Oh no.
Is he gone again? Oh no, dude.
To be continued.
Just stay gone. Come on, man.
Oh no.
Okay. I've got like 10
you had
points.
Something, yeah.
I'm gonna try to go off them as quickly as possible.
Yeah, go ahead.
NBA, Radar, you mentioned people want to say, are the Sixers better than the Nets or whatever? Well, the thing with that is that there's going to be something to determine that. It's called the NBA Finals.
Yeah, that's what we said in the beginning of this conversation was the Smash World Tour is the end-all answer to like what region is the best. Like,
why does... Yeah, okay, I'm going to say this. Actually, PG is just releasing Street Fighter and Tekken stuff for their entire career. But why every year does Street Fighter or Tekken or whatever not get rankings? It's because they have something at the end of the year to say who's the best. So that's my thought on that. I'll pivot to... I think Ambi made a point a while back, and I want to get on this. Yeah, like, so we started doing online results because we had to, and there was the idea intrinsically that these just didn't matter, so people could do whatever. And at no point did it ever become something where we flipped the switch and said, now it matters. It was kind of like a gradual thing of like getting more and more real. And I think if you have something where you say, okay, time to start a ranking, it starts right now, that's fine. But creating a ranking being like, oh, all the stuff for the past 12 months counted, people will be like, well, I was going a different character, or I was switching to a box, or if you don't tell people that something counts before it happens, then that's kind of rough. There's a disconnect. I don't really know if rankings is what obviously everything, like, rankings is a part of the pie. It's not the most important thing, and it keeps our scene alive, but I don't think that really... Like, if we don't put out a top 100, does the scene really die?
No, it doesn't. Yeah, I think they all add value in their own way.
Yeah.
Edwin, I completely agree with, like, literally everything that you wrote. I'm sorry that you got cut off by dumpy internet. The one thing that I will respond to that with is, can I make a motion for the 5 of us to just make a rankings?
I don't know if you're prepared for the hate you're going to get.
Oh, I'm not. I'm ready for it. I want to have it. Lay it on.
Bobby Bigballs by himself has probably entered 5 tournaments since we went live. Are you ready for that?
Yeah, I already got like 4 East Coast players mad at me.
Are you ready for the 18 tournaments?
Like, listen, guys, I have my finger on the trigger right now. I have written a tweet that says, so, like, do you guys want us to make an online ranking? Poll, yes.
Well, everyone's
gonna say you can do it. P-Test did the same thing. It was 55-45.
Okay, I think people, you can't like gauge how much people care, right? If it's a yes or no, it's a binary. So people can be like,
sure, $100. Like, would you say yes or no? Like, but does that mean like that's a bad example? But like, of course they're gonna say yes. Like,
yeah.
But listen, man, maybe I'm just fishing for engagement here, but like, come on, let me have my moment.
That's okay. I think fishing for engagement is totally safe.
I thought, I guess, with this, because like I get what everyone's saying. I think like Ambi's point is a really good one. I think that does kind of convince me that like, okay, like how do we handle this or that? It feels like we don't. I guess part of me sort of also thinks like, aren't we kind of always doing that with the Europe stuff? But obviously they're still sometimes in the events and everything. I guess my thought then like is, okay, if we accept the premise that we can't do a ranking, like what do we do? Maybe is there something that we could do that maybe doesn't fill the role of a ranking, but is still a positive and interesting? Do you know what I mean? Like, is there something that we could do instead, basically?
Yeah, and I think this is like a fun point, because this is like literally the reason that started making video essays. It's because we didn't have to spend all of our time doing ranking stuff because it was a lot less important. And I think that like it's not necessarily that like doing comparative skill level comparison content is like bad, right? Like that's still good. Like Anoke wrote this like very great piece like a week ago that got a lot of people very angry and very engaged. But
which one? I lose track of those.
yeah, I mean they're all like that, right? But,
yeah. I feel so bad for you. I'm sorry.
No, I mean I'm like literally bringing it on myself. I don't know. It's whatever.
I mean, the thing that I'm trying to get at is that like there's all sorts of like really fun, cool content that can be created, and like the motivation that exists for different type of content, I think is important to consider here. Like PG is like still making stuff, right? Like they're doing the tier list. They like have a bunch of like articles on there now about the fun brief period when we had LAN events in 2020.
How fun it was for 2 months before we like got hit by a whole train.
Yeah. So like I don't think it's necessarily that it's like a bad idea to make this sort of content. I think personally, I think that it's probably more limited to regions. But I think that you got to consider that there's all sorts of ideas for content that exist that are probably being given a higher priority at the moment.
Sure,
yeah,
but
like content. I'm just thinking like, is there something like say for example, if we were specifically trying to target this, how do we make Melee more esport legitimate? I don't know how you'd phrase it. Like, you know, how do we make it look more pro, more like more legit, more important? And maybe rankings were doing that before. What would be an alternative way to do that isn't just like, hey, here's an article about the best foxes in the Midwest? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, were rankings the ones that were bringing all the people to the tournaments, though? I think this is like a hard question to ask, right? Like, were we seeing tournaments that had all 5 gods because there was going to be a ranking? It kind of feels circular at this point to say that that's the case. And in terms of like getting your name out there, there's better ways we know. One, you can become the Melee Stats Player of the Month, tweet it out at the end of each month, highlighting players. But obviously, like the biggest thing is just growing your own stream, and there's no better way to do that through online. Like I guess there's no reason for that to exist independently of rankings, but I don't know if those bring as much value as like just having a consistent stream. Like, do you guys remember LG when LG signed Ginger? You know who they signed before Ginger? Albert. I'm not talking about Albert, the Falco.
Yeah, the Twitter dude.
I'm talking about Albert, the guy who said ratio. Better idea for them for like a gaming company to hire this guy who has nothing to do with games. How it's just like a better esports investment. So it's like kind of sad. You know, we've known this the entire time that like playing esports is never going to be the best marketing for an esports player. But I don't know. I think that we can find ways to highlight the players specifically who would benefit from a ranking without doing a ranking in a way that would uniquely fit the mold of online play. And I think, you know, if it's highlighting players like we try to do, or if it's the players themselves being able to stream their side of it, something that we've never got before, right? You can never watch a tournament from your house and say, I only want to see the sets that Polish plays.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of brand value that comes with that. That is just insane. That not a lot of other esports, I think, are capable of doing at the moment, which is also like a uniquely positioned thing that Melee has. One of the questions that I wanted to circle back to, Weed, I think your camera is frozen as well.
Is it?
But one of the questions that I wanted to try to bring back up, because I thought about it earlier when we talked about it towards the beginning of the show, and it was briefly brought up, I think, by you, Ambi, was the idea of like a regional ranking as opposed to just like a global top 100. Because yes, like asking in a vacuum, is IBDW better than Leffen as of 2020 is a completely loaded question. For anyone who follows Melee, like there's no data to actually support that. You'd be making a guess. I get that. What's the rationale for not doing a regional ranking? Because the way that I see it, like in terms of professional sports, for instance, like you have the NFL where you have conferences, and then, you know, for what Wheat said earlier, the way that the best team is, you know, how someone from the NFC East versus someone from the NFC West or whatever is determined as the best team is through the Super Bowl, or like, you know, a worldwide event where everyone kind of gets to come together and really prove their worth. What's the value or lack thereof of having a regional ranking?
Yeah, I mean, I think so there's this thing. I think I might get it wrong completely, but it's called like Genovese syndrome or something like that. And it's the idea that like it's like when you see trash on the street, and you're like, someone else will get it, right? And then literally every single person says someone else will get it, and then no one does it. Isn't that kind of the case here? You have like I would be involved more on a global ranking with PG, and am I frozen again?
You are.
It's frozen.
Okay,
you're on a good frame at least. So
well,
that's
what
cool.
you're saying. Like I was like, wait, who is talking right now? Like, oh, okay, yeah.
The thing is, PG is probably like, oh, we're not going to do it. Someone else can do it, and then it's whatever, you know, PR panel for the East Coast would be like, oh, we're not going to do it. Someone else will do it, and then just ends up no one ever does it. Like, would benefit from this possibly, but I just think that like it would take so much logistically for everyone to get it on the same page. Where I don't know how feasible it is. You know?
I think there's three things that go into this, right? So one of them is this bystander effect thing that we is talking about, where like making ranking content sucks because everyone gets mad at you and you don't get any, you know, happy feelings for making it despite all the labor. But what I also think is important is that a lot of like the big groups that would like, you know, own something like this are sort of hamstringed by the fact that they can't like use the word Slippy. I think that that's an underrated thing that people need to remember, is that you know the legal ramifications of making a ranking based off of something which could be argued to be highly illegal.
Hey, all I'm saying is that we can still make a ranking, guys.
I love
that. I said, don't be, you know, it's not crazy if PG or Red Bull doesn't want to say it, but anyone else can do it.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think that Anoke is actively doing it on a region basis at the moment, and I'm happy to stay far away from that for now. What was I going to say? I think the other thing that I wanted to mention is this off-season point that I made before, where I think it's very fair to say that just like the different players are taking it at different levels of serious right now because they're not IRL majors, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think that some players like see the fact that there are like 500 tournaments every day, and like they don't particularly have motivation to win every single one. And I think that that's it makes ranking things very awkward because like, you know, if you're treating it like it's a friendly, then like the different players will complain a lot more than they normally would, being given skill measurements for a set that they don't consider like their like tournament ready performance.
But I think the same holds true for LAN events. Like there are plenty of LAN events where people sandbag, and I understand the argument.
Yeah,
is,
but like
obviously it's much lower stakes.
It's like a very weighted decision to sandbag
that's
a LAN
fair.
event, right? Because you have to fly there. And like, you know,
like you know, you're talking about all these like hundreds of tournaments a day, but like I feel like even when we were doing LAN weeklies and stuff, like local tournaments, regional tournaments, like it felt like there were at any given time 6 or 7 melee tournaments, and you know, if anything, the weekly tournaments only had whoever was good in your region. Like, isn't there a counter argument that people maybe always were like, this random tournament on this day isn't that important? Like,
yeah, I mean, like I think they were less important, and I think that this is like one of those things that that a lot of people. This is another frustration point for me with the rankings. Is like the fact that like locals matter is really it's something that like bothers a lot of players because they think that like if they go to locals, they're jeopardizing their chances of being really good. But it's like no, like those tournaments are like much less important than like Genesis, right?
And
like,
now
everyone's
local.
Yeah. And like there are all sorts of locals, but like I think every local in the Slippy era is like a regional, right? Because there's like they're not limited by the fact that like, oh yeah, only people that are like within driving distance of this on a Wednesday are able to actually attend. So I think that like, you know, the counter argument is there, but I think that it's more that like these tournaments are very large relative to locals, and like it's very nebulous like what the stakes of any given one should be relative to the other because all of them are so large.
Edwin, I see you thinking. What's going on?
No, I'm mostly trying to think of how to not get yelled at by my spouse.
Just
That's
sit
it.
there quietly and like give face reacts. I have a question. Do you guys know that Ultimate has a Wi-Fi ranking or a online ranking?
Yes.
You know definitively that, right?
I mean, like, I'm familiar, but
see, the thing is, like, they have one. And Radar, you said that you don't know about it. I feel like I've sent it to Ambi and Edwin, making fun of it, but like, they had it. It has the legacy. It's like, we have a question: does this help? And they've answered the question, right? They have their own thing.
That's not a one-to-one comparison at all, though. Like when I hear
the thing with them is that they've literally done it for 3 years straight. Before, like, they did it when there were LAN events. Like, they have not only the not only did they do it, but they have a legacy. They have prestige that an online ranking from anyone but PG would have.
I do think it's not a one-to-one comparison, as Radar says, but I don't want to veer off into like it's because Ultimate's netcode is really bad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
boo, Poopy Ultimate.
Yeah, so
I have a question for you guys in response to that question. And the first part of this is actually, forgive me because I don't actually remember off the top of my head. When you guys are creating a rankings list traditionally, like for 2019 and earlier, no one knows more. I mean, like, sure, people know like the majors, like your Genesis, your Big House, what have you. Those are all going to be put into consideration for a rankings list, but do players know in advance what events are going to be considered for the top 100 before they get into that ranking year?
Yeah, I mean, that's its own thing, right? Like, the way that we do it is that every single tournament is counted, basically. Like, you would have to go against the grain to be not counted specifically. You'd have to be Smash the Record, where you're playing on Mushroom Kingdom 2, or actually a big example is one of the only things that wasn't counted for 2019 was Hax's Nightclub Season 1, or they didn't call it Season 0, I don't think.
Season 1, I think, yeah.
But it wasn't counted because they themselves didn't count it for the NYCPR. That they use a lot of, they use a different stage list. They use monitors. They were trying out a lot of different things, and they didn't want to count it for themselves. So we're not going to have something where, like, like Hacks might go or Captain Smuckers might go, and it doesn't matter who they lose to for their PR, and then suddenly they're not top 100 because of it.
Right. So my question with that in mind would be, again, two questions for this. Similar to how we have an understanding going into 2021 for the Smash World Tour, what events are qualifiers or regional events for these participants to make it to the big stage at the end of the year. What stops us from, because we plan these events years in advance, or probably 8 months in advance, deciding on a dedicated list of events that will be considered for rankings, and then at that point, and again, like, I'm cutting a lot of corners here, so just take that with a grain of salt, but it's like at that point you cut locals, and you have, these regionals, these nationals, and these super majors are definitively the ones that are going to be ranked. Then there's not as much, in my opinion, of an argument for, well, this guy sandbagged this event. It's like, okay, well, this player knew that he was going to get ranked for this event anyway, so it's their own fault. Part one. And then part two, what about for presumably in 2022, where online events will, I would hope, most likely continue to happen, because it is a very net good thing for the community to host them. They're low stakes, like what Ambi said. They're very easy barrier to entry, and it's just there's nothing wrong with it aside from the legality standpoint, obviously, in running these online events, because they're easy to do. You don't have any overhead. You don't have to even rent a venue. You can just kind of plan one on a whim. What happens then when you have a blend of LAN events plus online events, and things still aren't defined on what is going to be considered for these rankings?
I can't speak for Ambi or Wheat, but I would treat them as separate. Like, I would treat online rankings as it's like whole different thing. And if there are no online rankings, then we just have online events and then LAN majors. I guess like online results would be I guess I would consider them more like akin to locals, like maybe indicative of trends, but slightly weight major performance is a little higher. Ambi and wheat, I don't know if you guys disagree with that or not, but like that's just how I can't speak for you too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two different things that Walt said there. The first one is, so Walt, you mentioned like a bunch of tournaments that people would say these specifically count. That would have to be beforehand, right?
It would, and I understand like that's a logistical fucking nightmare. Again, like I'm trying to figure out a good way to make this consistent.
Yeah, like you're running into some issues there, of course, like even deciding what does count, right? Do you say, like they announce some tournament that seems legit, you say this counts and it turns out to get 16 people, but even then that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is what do we do with like 9 months of Slippy tournaments where we didn't specifically say this, right?
Sure.
And that's kind of the thing here. Like we don't know how seriously people took this. Like this was not something that any of us went into thinking that this was going to be Melee. Like remember we were really dumb and we were like, oh, we'll be back to normal by May, right?
But wait,
I'll go to Shine and CEO.
Right.
Isn't the like the elephant in the room here then kind of like, because not to sort of pull the topic back a bit, especially since we're already kind of getting to sort of a long show, but wouldn't people say the same thing about the World Tour and the panel and how you're deciding people? Like, couldn't they say, oh, you're picking the 16 best players in the West Coast? Well, no one's taking it seriously, or that tournament doesn't, like, aren't we still determining, like,
yeah, sort of go? There's months to figure that out.
But like, the thing about that too, and for in general for Smash World Tour, and again, in my opinion, and the suggestion of like creating a list of like this is what will be considered for a rankings year, is that the onus falls on the player to decide whether or not they're going to care about their ranking at that point. I like personally, I think that if it was more well defined in the beginning, you would still get like hate because it's like, oh, I deserve to be rank 7 instead of rank 98. But like, you know, it's it's still like, you know, there's objective just results there of, okay, like there is no argument for you to be ranked 7th over 98th because you didn't make top 64 at a single ranking event for that year. And you knew this going into the year, because these were the events that were laid out that were going to be considered for this, as opposed to I did well at a local, blah, blah, blah. So
I have a couple of like loosely connected thoughts on Walt's earlier questions. I think the first, just to note about your earlier question about how to do rankings like pre-2019 when you're doing this for LAN events, is that there already is like this structure of prestige in place for tournaments that exist in Melee, right? Like, you know, anyone would be like, oh yeah, you know, doing well at Big House is more important than performing well at Smash at Xanadu 105, right? And that there's also like the implicit, like a very large tournament is usually more competitive than a very small tournament. So when you do rankings, typically you can like sort of backdate it by like which tournaments, like who performed well at the big ticket majors and who performed well at the largest events.
Mm-hmm.
That's generally the way I think of it. And like, you know, you don't not matter if you do well at smaller events. It's not like those results go away, but like they're lower stakes events. You don't have to, you know, perform super well to win them compared to really large events. So they're weighted a little bit less, but they still matter to some degree, right? And I think that something that needs to be said about transferring this sort of frame of thinking to the online era is that it sort of can't work that way, because there's this implicit threat of cease and desist, right? Sure. I think that's an important thing to remember, is that like if you laid out a bunch of qualifying events that were online Slippy tournaments, even if they were like legally allowed to do so, right?
Right.
If they were legally allowed to designate specific tournaments as Slippy, you know, Smash World Tour Champions tournaments or whatever. If those get cease and desisted, it's over. Like you what do you do? Like you need to like hack together another major to get another qualifying event, and like maybe that'll get cease and desisted. Whereas like right now, the way it's set up now is that it's just like a panel that decides it based off of the largest tournaments that get the most views that end up happening, right? And if one of them gets cease and desisted, we can just replace it with another one because there's so many of these things, right? And whoever does well at the large events that people attend that are the most competitive are the people that are the most likely to make it. And I think to address Radar's point about like, oh yeah, what if X player is like, oh yeah, like they sandbag, they're totally better than Y or Z or whatever. And like the ultimate point that I want to make here is that the Smash World Tour is not a ranking.
That's right.
It's a little bit somewhere between ranking and seeding, right? Where it's like, you consider the entire period, but it's more oriented towards who are like the X best players in a particular region at a given time by the time we get to the point. Like if you don't make it to the regional qualifier, it's not that you're not one of the 16 best players in the region. It's that you did not perform as well as the 16 players that did make it.
It's a global
and I think that this is an important nuance. It's an important nuance to know about Smash World Tour is that it's not a ranking, because I think that people get really upset about rankings because they're a skill judgment for a player, and these are less of a skill judgment for a player, and they're more of like, these are the people that were active and performed well leading up to the tournament. That's the way that I would put it.
I think we should probably transition into questions if we have some, and if not, kind of maybe closing thoughts, because I think we're already at around 2 hours. We're getting long.
Yeah, it's a juicy topic. So.
I think that like the same as our last episode with controllers and stuff. Obviously, like the discussion does not end here. I think like we could go on, like literally go on for hours about this, and I'm very interested in doing that at some point, because
maybe we do it as a joint Patreon post.
All right, I'm down.
Let's try to put this behind a paywall.
The 8-hour podcast episode.
Yeah, the 2 hours.
Yeah, just straight bender.
Option.
Me and Wheat will be thrown up in the bathroom by the time this is over with how much we're drinking. Okay, yeah, I think we have a couple more like lighthearted questions. Again, I mean, really great discussion overall. I think that there's a ton of really good points made. Again, discussion does not end here for sure. I had a few in my Discord and from the hashtag Radar. I don't know if you had any in specific, or even if you guys might have brought it up to your Discord, or any of your followers at Melee Stats Folk.
I think our Discord's talking about what the best neutral colored Samus is.
They're North, not neutral Samus.
That neutral Samus came into it. There's a lot of
color Samus. Poop Samus all day. Just no question.
No, Poop was a Falcon player.
My favorite player ever, dude.
He's so good.
Or Sedimentary Rock, who was like number 2 in his region for 10 years because Poop would always beat him.
Sedimentary Rock played Brown Samus, right?
Yeah.
It all cycles back together.
Played Poop Samus, but he couldn't beat the Poop. What questions do we have?
Okay, so we got one from my Discord. This was from Smorehead. He says, my heart tells me this is something Melee Stats would know the answer to. Has there ever been, within reasonable parameters, a technically perfect game of Melee played by a player? For example, converted all guarantees openings even if they missed punishes on mix-ups, missed 0 L cancels, hit all ledge dashes, etc.
Oh, you know what? Maybe there has been. There might have been, if you allow ice climbers.
Oh, true.
I remember there was a couple times Wobbles JV5 people, like on FD, like versus a Falcon. I think it depends on your definition of leap parameters, because if you get like a 1 frame delayed wave dash forwards, that's still like fine, right? So
Ambi, what is the name of X Pilot's AI? I feel like that was the first.
No, Philip makes mistakes, dude. Philip doesn't know what to do if you crouch. So
oh no,
that might be a
Philip thing. You just go Samus and crouch and down smash.
Well, the thing is with Philip is that if you crouch, it doesn't engage with you because it doesn't know how to beat crouch cancel. So it just runs around until it kills itself, which is like the appropriate thing to do against a crouching player, I think. But yeah, I think that's if you don't allow wobbling and 4 wobbles to a JV5, then I think that the answer to this question is probably no.
Fair,
That'd be
totally
a fun
fair.
thing. With Slippy at events, so we get the SLP files. We can like dig through, see who
the search for the perfect Melee game.
15 talent every time.
A short film by Melee Stats. Okay, cool. We got another
It's
one
actually
from
Amy's Puff versus my Fox.
Hell yeah. We got another question
2018.
from Cypher. Shout outs to the Bottom of the Smash Mountain podcast. Give that one a listen, because my man Jesse is putting in some work.
Can we update the topic list so when I'm going through the edit, I can quickly get the timestamp? Just so, yeah, there we go.
Gotcha.
That's why it's easy to see.
These ones are directed for Melee Stats again. Why is Wheat's beard the best beard? Do we have to wait another 8 years for Book of Melee 2? If you could choose any city or region in the world to host a super major, where would it be? Who had the best young Link in 2015? Favorite pizza toppings? Thoughts on Team Akinia?
I want to answer the where would you host a major? I have 2 answers. I think one in San Salvador would be really cool, and I think one in Beijing would be pretty cool.
Ooh, okay.
I don't know. There's nothing in Beijing for Melee. I think that'd be really cool. I remember there was that one tournament that was supposed to happen in China that didn't end up happening a long time ago. But I think that it'd be really cool to have a tournament.
My answer might be the Gamer Cruise.
Gamer Cruise, International Waters. Yeah.
You remember that?
What a throwback.
It was get your sun lotion to your controller. Like literally everyone that they also said they would have the 5 gods, and then like I don't even know if they okayed that because PP was not playing. Team Akinia, cool. I don't know why it's called that. I feel like any other name that anyone could spell would be sick.
Cool.
Pronounced, to be honest.
What's that?
Favorite topping?
I was saying pronounced
one.
There's so many questions. I don't even know where to begin.
The one for you, Edwin, was: do we have to wait another 8 years for Book of Melee 2?
Probably not another 8 years, but maybe like 3, 2. I don't know.
Write that down. Someone write that down.
It's gonna be the Book of Ultimate.
The Book of Ultimate.
And
the thing is the only thing I'll say, because people have asked me this earnestly, the only thing I would say is that like the approach I took for the first book was from the perspective of someone that was in the scene for a while but wanted to like write it as if anyone could write it, right? So it was very results oriented and like encyclopedic, and that reflected my relationship with Melee at the time. But my relationship with the game and with the scene is so different now. So if I ever actually earnestly wrote the Book of Melee 2, it would be very different. I would take a different approach, or I would have to like, or there'd be a lot of things that I cut out of the first book that I'd want to include in the second one.
Sure.
So it's hard to say.
All right, so I'll wrap up with, there's a couple questions that I got in my Discord, Radar. I don't know if you have any that are burning that you want to go through.
Like I looked through them, but like, and I did ask, but I don't think they fit or like are great questions. So
the big one that I will acknowledge, and you guys, of course, barring time, are welcome to answer this. Radar, I know that you and I are planning a follow-up episode of the Mixup with some interesting guests in the next couple of weeks, specifically to address this. But this was a question from JDMH asking, what is Melee's marketing issue and how do we fix it? And I think that's a super, super deep rabbit hole. So obviously we can kind of keep this surface level if we want. And, for people in chat, we are planning an episode at some point. I do believe Scar and Atrioc are meeting next week as well to discuss this very thing from all of the Twitter discourse that has been happening since yesterday or the day before. But
why would Scar and Atrioc be meeting?
I don't know.
I know Atrioc is into marketing, but
it's Bengalis.
Well, isn't Scar also in marketing?
I thought he was product management. I could be wrong.
Yeah, he's PM, I think. Whatever. So hold on. So I think I have a fun answer for this one, and I think that the way that I think of it, I think Slime put it really well. Is that I think that before Slippy, it was very difficult to stream Melee because there's really never any narrative. It's very difficult to like stream grinding friendlies and have that really be engaging for your audience because like such a small subset of the people that watch Melee are there to watch specific interactions from your grind sessions, right? But I think that like now with Slippy, it's so easy for players to stream their tournament runs and to like make content around unranked or even ranked when that comes out. That watching it feels like it's a bunch of little stories changed together, right? Compared to before, where it's just like unconnected gameplay. And because Slippy is so new, I think that like the ability that people have to make streams that are like really compelling stories for people to watch is like very underdeveloped at the moment. I think that most streamers of Melee consider themselves pretty bad at it relative to the really good streamers. So I don't necessarily think that there's a marketing problem, but I think that like the ability to transition Smash as something that you can create your own stories for as opposed to just participating in a major is very new. And I think that will just see development in time as the as everyone gets better at it. But that's my perspective on it.
Very good
I have
answer.
a bit more like I have a bit more like weirdly specific. I think the ecosystem of things around Smash, like literal things that you sell, is very like I don't think there's a way. Like I'm trying to envision what a marketing funnel for Smash would look like to actually determine like what people's wants are and what our potential audience is. And I feel like without like I'm glad we don't have Nintendo lurking over the Smash scene, but I will say like something that's unfortunately a byproduct of us having a decentralized community is that we don't have a central apparatus to collect and analyze a ton of it. I know, Ambi, you mentioned Slippy sort of doing that with like actual gameplay, but we don't have a centralized like apparatus for actually surveying our market and our potential market. It's very difficult to actually collect information and sell the scene, I guess, to put it like really bluntly, and things around it to prospective people. I would say that that's one of our like biggest roadblocks right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like I think we just need to be in Kotaku more. As horrible as it sounds, I don't want to be in Kotaku more, but I swear people know that we exist when we are. I think like always, this will be for anything that you see, any big tournament that we have. One of the best things that we can get is if you go on Twitch and just hit browse, and we're literally the 5th biggest game or whatever. That's always good for us because I don't know about you guys. I kind of do that sometimes. I'll go on Twitch, and if I see like Super Monkey Ball and it's like the 3rd most game, I'll be like, I guess I got to click on this. I guess I got to see what's going on with Super Monkey Ball. And that's always one of the best things that we can get, right? Is people who are like, oh yeah, I've played Melee when I was a kid, or I played Nintendo games. Let's see why this stream has 100,000 views.
Also, I just want to clarify one thing on the reason I'm responding like genuinely and like surprised is that I didn't know like I'm a little surprised that Scar and Aatrox would like want to be like super involved in like figuring out what Melee's marketing problem is. It's like I don't know. I feel like one of the big problems is that like the problem with asking someone like me this, let alone like the rest of us, is that like the way I conceive of Melee is through following the scene and knowing who people are in every region, right? So it's like my perspective on this is entirely through the lens of like knowing results and like keeping up with the scene. So I think that like I think that the idea of like I think it's important to market the scene, and it's important to have figures who, like in the scene who want to do it and who have basically brought the scene to the national level before. But it's like you have to know what is going on. You have to actually understand what's going in the streets, right? Before you can politically organize.
It's going to be very funny when someone who doesn't know who Kodoran is like, how do we get people to care about Melee? Like, that's going to be the entire stream.
I mean, I don't totally
I trust
agree.
Atriox's marketing experience. I know he's very good at that. I'm just surprised that Scar. It's like, yeah, Kador, and like Scar is gonna be shocked that LSD is beating like Westfalls or something, and I don't know.
I think like that
entering stuff again, right?
Hey, shoutouts to Logan, by the way. That was my old region, but I digress.
I think it's, you know, again, like this is something we wanted to do a whole episode on and stuff, but obviously you need to like understand like the details of it. Like if we're gonna call Melee a product, like obviously you need to understand like the more you know the better. But I also think there is such a thing as like, okay, like how do we make, you know, general, say for example, experience in esports and how to build up an esports scene. Like I would trust someone who, say for example, turned a game that was like the 20th most popular esport to the 5th most popular esport, and like what they did to do that. Obviously that's not going to be something that one person is responsible for, but I guess what I'm trying to speak to is like, I think there are things like you don't need to know who Kadoran is to know that like, okay, things that would help Melee is maybe more centralized tournament structure, which, you know, we've already spoken to a bit about how like that doesn't necessarily work as well because of slippy stuff. Like I don't want to kind of go off on a huge rambling rant, but like I don't think you necessarily, like I don't think results are I think it's also about like how do you sell kind of the experience, the like everything, like and so when you watch,
right, I mentioned results as one one example. That's not like the end all be all. That's the only reason I brought up like knowing who a player was. Like, and I get that there's limits to like that on its own. I just mentioned that as an example.
Yeah, but I think you don't even need to know any players to know how to market it. Like at least to me, I'm not saying that you would need to know like about the game, but I think like you could say like, hey, what do we do about the game to make it interesting, and how do we set up situations where the game can show off why it's interesting? I don't feel like you need to know who's the best. You just create an environment where that can happen. Like
I don't think we can continue talking about this without talking about it. So I think it would probably be good to
save it for your
guys,
episode.
well, yeah, you know, the Mixup is excited to bring on the Melee Stats podcast next week for a brand new episode.
Keep going. You gotta start. No, but
yeah, we have a few ideas in mind for it. So I mean, I have a lot of ideas in terms of just like, you know, the general layman's like he make Melee look cool to average caveman, but we're gonna save that for another time. Hopefully we hear from you guys, because obviously we all value the three of y'all's opinions very highly when it comes to this sort of thing.
We weren't downers, right?
No, not that bad.
I think every podcast I've been on turns into a downer.
No, I think we're on a pretty high note, honestly. I think there's still like the thing is there's still like a shitload of discussion that is to be desired for these, at least for
Discourse.
Smash World Tour and online rankings and stuff like that. I mean, I could see a follow-up happening at some point.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, but, maybe we don't invite Edwin, but other than that, I think it's great.
I live for the discourse.
Absolutely, yeah.
Don't you have a call to drop from?
Oh, damn. Yeah, we kept Edwin really late. I apologize, man.
It's okay.
Apologies to your spouse as well. I hope everything is okay.
No, it's all right. I had a blast. I had a blast being on today. Thanks for inviting us, for real.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think obviously the three of you were the perfect people to talk to when it comes to this sort of thing. We're excited to bring it up at another point because, you know, I'm still really interested. I'm probably gonna DM you guys at some point and just chat about this. Can't wait for my poll to come out on if we're gonna make an online ranking and for everyone to say no.
And I would actually be really interested in this because P-Test made the same tweet. So if yours gets more, I think that's very interesting.
All right, well, you got me convinced. I'm gonna tweet it then.
I'm gonna
Do
say,
you guys want an online ranking? And that's
I'm gonna say 69-31.
Okay.
That's my guess.
I'm gonna say 80%. No, that's too high.
70%? No. 20% yes.
70% of the
All right,
same.
Hang on. Before we close, so like, do you guys want an online ranking?
I'm gonna say 67-33.
The same as Martha versus Fox. It'll be 65-35.
Yes. No. How many days am I giving this to? Is that too long?
I only do 1 day polls. One day polls is the way.
Is it?
I mean, we do one day
I trust
polls
you.
on
I'm
our
not.
Melee Stats March Madness, which can be voted on
Okay.
on our Twitter. Melee Stats.
All right. I'm firing it off right now. So let's see where our percentages are at the end of the night. At 10:49 p.m. tomorrow, we'll know who's the right choice here.
Yeah, on the next podcast we do.
And if you want to give us more incentive, then you can go to patreon.com/MeleeStats.
Are we already plugging?
Yeah, no, please go ahead.
And give us money and bribe us to make rankings, especially if you sub at the $9,999 tier.
We'll unban you from the Discord if you sub at that tier.
Can't guarantee that.
Okay, we'll consider unbanning
For the
you.
low cost of $9,999, you too can be a part of this open Discord server that everyone can join at any point.
Hey, there's Patreon only channels.
That's true.
It's a $5 reward.
Yeah, for sure. Like, subscribe to us on Twitter, Jesus, YouTube.
Subscribe to us on Twitter.
Super follow is what you meant, right?
Follow us on Twitter. You don't need to follow my Twitter. I'm not going to tweet, but if you want to DM me,
okay. So Wheat doesn't tweet that much, but his tweets are really.
Just go through the old ones, and you can DM me about anything. We can talk music or flags. I've been into flags recently.
Okay.
We can talk about like the coolest flags. I'm down for that. But yeah.
Have you ever seen that? I'm trying to think. It was like a flag collection. I'll see if I can send you the link. It was like, never mind.
It's already working. I'm already getting flag DMs.
Jeez.
Yeah, follow me. I make good tweets.
He does.
Yes, you do actually. That what was it? The box anime one is still like in a pocket of my memory that I won't be erasing for a while. But yeah, no, guys, thank you all so much for again, a wonderful show. We are approaching the 3-hour mark again, so we're on a hot streak, Radar. I think we're onto something here with this. Everyone says 3 hours is the new 10-minute mark on YouTube, so we might as well just stick with that.
I'm just killing my YouTube algorithm stuff. Like they're like, oh, a 3-hour video, yay! So.
But yeah, guys, it was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for watching. Really, really appreciate it a lot. Last thing that I want to bring to you guys for just your opinion is who are we rating for this? The end of the show.
Who's live?
I'm thinking I'm between Toph because he's talking about, I believe, the most controversial matchup of Falcon versus Sheik, and Axe is also streaming, but we can do Toph.
I'm a big fan of Toph, so that sounds like a good one.
Toph,
Cool.
Toph hard won me over in the past few years, so go for Toph.
All right. So we are going to be rating Toph. I've actually have not done a raid before, so I feel like I can end the stream after this, right? Like I just want to make sure I'm doing this correctly. So like I can raid, people can start filtering in, and then we'll close the stream out, right? Right?
Yeah. I think so.
All right, cool. I'm gonna start the raid now. In any case, thank you guys all for watching. For the people who are still in chat, thank you guys for sticking around through this absolute bender of an episode that we had again. I am pretty confident this is not the last time we will see the Melee Stats gang over with the Mixup. Hopefully we can do some more collaborative shows in the future, because this was a blast and I had a ton of fun doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, guys. We are starting the raid now for Toph, and that's going to be that. So thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.